Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. Joining me in the studio is my brother from another mother, Robbie Rip Rains. Steve is off tonight because he has to work, and Doc is on vacation with his lovely bride. So it'd just be the three of us hanging out with my good friend Josh Nanocchio. Josh from Lurks Beneath. If you guys aren't familiar with that channel, you probably aren't paying attention because that's one of the best channels out there. It is an absolutely fantastic channel full of great stories. And if you want to get the crap scared out of you, that's the place to do it. Josh, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I wanted to come in guns blazing. Have you guys got a chance to hear Matt Emsch's story? I'm sure by now almost everybody has.
Yes.
Yeah. Honestly, hands down, it is probably one of the most powerful, terrifying stories. And the reason why I want to come out swinging with that one is because there's only been, out of all the stories that I've ever read and told, you guys got to remember too. So before I ever started What Lurks Beneath, I had been nerding out on like Bigfoot stories and like for years. I think it goes back to 2013. I could actually remember. So back when I was 23, I'm 33. Back when I was 23, I interned at this like little place. They basically you fix up computers and stuff. And so I remember I would take the bus there. And I remember on one of the days, I don't know why, but I was like, I kind of want to just really check out more Bigfoot stuff. And I ended up finding the BFRO and I started reading a bunch of Bigfoot stories. And I feel like that, I don't want to say that started the journey because I've grown up. My mom was always a really big, I don't want to say paranormal enthusiast, but she Bigfoot was really big for her. And so, yeah. And then 2014, I somehow discovered the concept of Dogman. I'm like, what the heck is a Dogman? And that just really, really interesting. And then, so I just was sucking this stuff down as much as I could for years. And it wouldn't be until a couple years later, where I would do these long drives back from where I was working at the time. And I discovered a couple different YouTubers that I really started listening to. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is intense. And so that was kind of the pre What Lurks Beneath and getting into that. So I've absorbed a lot of this stuff. And so obviously when I started to do What Lurks Beneath, I'd go through so many stories and just read the stuff. And so even though I started off narrating, there's probably, for every story that I narrated, there's probably 10 or 20 that I would never, whether it be for copyright reasons or just whatever. So I'm always ingesting it. But anyway, I'm prefacing this stuff because the Matt Emsch story is so powerful. It is one of the only stories, one of the few where I literally had a genuine emotional reaction. And I've never been choked up from a story ever. And that's why I opened up the video. I'm listen, this is genuine. I've this terrified. And obviously I'm not alone because tons of people had the same reaction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And him and I are pretty close. He's texting me and he's getting people who are reaching out to him all the time who are like, oh my gosh. I had friends text me hey, Josh, I watched your interview with Matt. I'm horrified. I think doing these kinds of things is really important because it really, when you have videos in that kind of format, it really opens up the public to, they may kind of have an a small inkling of maybe paranormal things, maybe ghosts, but they hear that, they're like, what the heck? Because, most people think that they're like, oh yeah, werewolf, right? But they start to hear that and they're like, oh my gosh, there's this whole other plane of things that I never even knew existed. And so that's kind of what happened to me is you stumble on a thing and that starts the domino effect, man. You just start stumbling down the rabbit hole. So, I think one of the things I'm definitely proud of with that is definitely how many people are that get to hear his story and who may have had a slight interest in the paranormal and who are now wow, maybe there's more to everything going on. So yeah.
Well, that is a good thing because I'd definitely like to see this field continue to expand and attract the interest of more people. And it's stories like that that's going to do it.
Yeah, it can be harder to find real good, genuine cats though, because I've dealt with a lot of people who want their 15 minutes and it's just sometimes it's like you kind of got to like learn to discern, like, okay, I wouldn't say like whether they're lying or not, but it's like there's just a way in which you could tell how somebody's talking and typing and just, speaking to you, where I'm like, I don't know. So it's like, and then you get cases like him where it's not just his story, but it's like also him.
Right.
He's just also really good at like reliving his thing. And that's the thing too, is he's not telling a story. He's reliving a traumatic experience. And I think that's what makes it so like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm sitting in a therapy office with somebody recounting like a past trauma as a child. And I feel like that kind of comes off first and foremost. And it's when you have those kind of experiences, not like what he went through, but when you're experiencing it with the person, at that point, it's not about storytelling. It's about like just like reliving that with them. It's almost therapeutic for them. You could see they're visibly shaken, that they're choked up, they're having a hard time. And I get it. And this is one of the things I've talked about in some of my past videos, where I'm like, the field in which we deal with, I get why there's a lot of pushback, because you're dealing with things and topics that are so far out there to the majority of people that they just can't handle it. It's just like, yeah, whatever, I can't do it. But I'm like, listen, I've had experiences. I'm like, you can't, there's not always like proof. It's like, how do you, I think that's what makes it so intriguing. Is like, how do you have so many people with all these experiences, and for there to be, for it to not exist, it's mind boggling. And it's really funny because go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and people giving the same details who never met.
Yeah. So funny enough, my wife, not a believer at all. Like her and I are both Christian, like that those are our beliefs, but she does not believe in Bigfoot, which is really interesting, because she's had like what she would call a paranormal experience. But yeah, she does not buy into the idea of cryptids at all. And it's really interesting. And so I'm always like, maybe one day we'll see one in the car together so she could like, see it. I'm like, come on. No, I don't really wish that. But sometimes I'm like, what? And so like we've gone back and forth. I'm like, how? I'm like, I'm the expert here. I'm really not. But like between her and I'm like, honey, I've dealt with all these, like, how? And she's like, well, people are just misidentifying. I'm like, oh, come on. It drives me crazy, right? And so I'm like, if you only knew. So it's just one of those things where it's like, you really start to look at it. And like you were saying, you see all these connections between all these accounts. And one thing that's always really got me is the natives. And every tribe has story after, and not just story, experiences. I've had a chance in the past 5 years to talk to quite a few people from like the warm. So I'm Southern Washington State. The Warm Springs is south of me. They're around like Central Oregon. And then there's also the Yakima tribe up north of me. I've gotten a chance to talk to several of them. They all have experiences. And like to them, the spirits, things that we think are like, oh yeah, whatever, those are movies. It's all matter of fact to them. Like it's no different than reality. They're just like, oh yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know they're there. We've all had experiences. There's certain places you don't go. There's certain things you don't say. And it's like, wow. It's so like ingrained, and that they can't comprehend why we're so like, oh yeah, that doesn't exist. They're like, what? Okay, you need to go out in the woods more.
No,
it's just a matter of fact to them. It's not.
Yeah. And I've likened this before to the concept of like, can you imagine being back in like the 1800s and you're in you're in America, and you're starting to advance into the 1800s, where definitely things are changing a lot technologically, and people come over here and they say, hey man, you ever heard of a lion? You're like, no, what the heck is that? And they're describing you a lion, but you've never seen it, so you can't even comprehend what a lion is. And it's almost like that. We're like, what? Like that doesn't exist. And it's like, no, a lot of, we're over here in this area. That's kind of how I imagine that it is for some of these people, when they're trying to like wrap their head around it. And again, obviously, we're dealing with something here that you really can't begin to rationalize. And I think that's part of the problem, is like our brains sort of like, oh, well, there's an explanation. No, there's not. Like you're dealing with something that seems to defy all laws of physics, all laws of nature. There is no sense, because you're dealing with something that doesn't make sense. And it's just, I think that's what gets a lot of people. They're like, I don't know. Or my favorite is you get people who are like, why? There's not, the supernatural doesn't exist. They have an experience, and they're like, what do I do with this now? They're like, I need to tell somebody, like, I need answers. Like, someone help me. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of emails that I've had poured in over the years from like families, from people who are like, listen, I'm 64. I saw a flipping werewolf. I don't know what else to call it. You say it's a dogman. I don't know what that is. I'm just telling you what I saw.
Right.
And I feel bad for these people, man. They're like, I don't, who do I talk to about this? You kind of can't, man. It's like, it's almost for like I was saying, for these people, it almost becomes therapeutic, because like, where do they go with it?
Yeah. You can talk to somebody that's not going to immediately think they're on correct.
Yeah. Well, but we've talked about this so many times on the show. The term dogman's only been around since late 90s.
Mhm.
So terming it a
Before that-
werewolf is what's that's
Werewolf
people our
or a wolf
age.
or something along those
Yeah,
lines.
people our age. That's what we would have called it. I mean, because that's what it was. That's the.
It's got to be nuts for you guys. So I was born in 90. So it's got to be crazy for you older guys, because it's like, you see something like that. On all the only references you have, the Howling, Silver Bullet, American Werewolf in London, and your head, you're thinking like, holy crap, like these are real.
Right.
Like, what else do you like? I would feel even worse for the guys who had like experiences in the 50s and 40s, and because that wasn't a thing. You just see a half man, half wolf. You're like, what the hell is that thing? Like, I don't know.
Well, the lore of the Wolfman has been around for a long time. The werewolf,
long time.
So when you look back at the history, like when you start digging into it, you start reading about cynocephali and things like that. You realize that people have been seeing these things for centuries, thousands of years. So it's not like it's a new occurrence. It's just there just wasn't a word for it. And when people saw something like that, one of two reactions: they thought they were hallucinating, or it was some sort of demon.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I wish I could remember who I talked to about this, and I was going to get more information on it. But the Choctaw and the Chickasaw have many stories of not just dogmen, but of like warring between them and also what they would describe as like Bigfoot-like entities.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fascinating. In fact, I wish I can I'm gonna have to dig and like try to find this so I can like DM you later. But apparently there's like a story of like apparently I don't know if it was a Choctaw or Chickasaw, one of them, where they actually had to go and like travel 3 or 4 days into like the Dogman encampment or something like that, and like all of them died except one or something like that. And apparently these Bigfoot and Dogman were warring with each other because the natives were food to them. It's just like, my gosh, man, it's like it runs so deep, and this is stuff you really got to dig for.
Right. It's not something you can find in your books at your library. You've got to really do a deep dive to find some of this stuff
and talk to people, man, because like,
it is there.
Yeah, 100. And again, like all these especially around the South too. And forgive me because I'm very unfamiliar with all the tribes that are around like Louisiana going into Texas. Like, I'm aware of the Seminoles and stuff like that, but it just seems like that whole region, that seems to be where there's a lot more of these experiences. I would say like eastern Texas, kind of going into the South here, kind of go up Tennessee, kind of Kentucky, up in Ohio. It's like that whole mid to eastern section of the United States just filled with all sorts of stories. And I think looking back, I think I heard the term dogman, I think from Vic Cundiff. I'm like, what the heck is a dogman? I started listening to these stories. I'm like, whoa. Like there are real life werewolves, and I started to learn, oh, these aren't shapeshifters. Like, these are actually just some.
That's what they are.
Yeah, wolf-like cryptid. Like, I don't know. And it's funny. I got DM'd by some girl a couple days ago. She's like, "Have you ever heard of the Beast of Bray Road?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And she's like, "You need to do an episode on it." So I'm like, "It's got to be done. The people have requested it." I'm like, but those to me are kind of harder because that's so ambiguous, because like there's so many ways you can go with that. You know what I mean? It's like, do you cover like recent Dogman account? Do you just kind of package it all? So I like that. Those are the kind of things where I'm always like, okay, well, how do you do it justice? Right? It's already been done so many times by really good people. I mean, Linda Godfrey, of course, is like the number one person that that's her throne, and that's her forte was that. So I'm like, I don't want to do what she did. So I'm like, how do you touch that subject, and like do it justice? Everything's already been covered. You
approach it from your own angle, but you've got to pay respect to who came before.
100%. And I honestly think that it does kind of bleed into part of the whole missing 411 phenomena. You know, for a lot of you out there, I've not really been vocal about this, but I've been a huge fan of just missing person phenomena and really into that. My mom's, you know, she's got all the David Paulides books and she's really into that. I would definitely here maybe the next year really like to get more into missing person stuff, just because there's just something about, I always think to myself, I'm like, you know, if I could use my clout to potentially bring closure to some of these families, I'm like, that would be so incredible. That's like one of my goals. And so I don't know if it'll ever happen, but you know, it'd be really cool to do. And so,
I wonder if he's heard our theory, DA.
What's that?
So I was wondering if you had heard mine and DA's theory about the missing 411s.
Go for it.
All right. What, 3-4 months ago, DA?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. We have a show and we're just having the show, just talking, and it almost like a light bulb hit both of us and DA's son Noah at the same time. We're all like, wait a minute. DA, pull up a map of the missing 411s. Pull it up. Pull up a map of the known Bigfoot sightings. Pull that one up.
Oh.
Pull up a map of the cave systems. They almost all three overlap.
That's why. I've heard of the cave and the missing. I've seen that before, but I didn't think of the Bigfoot one.
Yeah, it overlaps too.
They're also saying now that the Mammoth Cave system extends much farther than they originally thought. Mammoth Cave, instead of just going under the Appalachians, they think it runs from Maine to southern New Mexico.
So think about that, Josh. And then think about this, because this is the whole light bulb moment right here. So as we're talking about that, we get to talking like, you know, do we think Bigfoot's walking around in the forest with a Louisville slugger? I mean, have you ever tried to pick up a good, decent tree limb to make a tree knock while you're in the woods? It's not easy to find one. That's not going to just disintegrate in your hands when you try to hit. Well, DA can do this because he did it at the Gatlinburg conference. Everybody went, what if it's a tongue click and they're using it as echolocation if they're traversing the subterranean areas of caves?
I mean, it's things like that, I think, that also explain like weird noises underground. I've had countless stories, especially a lot that I've never actually ever aired an episode, where people have talked about like, hey, like, listen, I was in the middle of like this remote trail. I'm 3 miles away from a parking lot. There's no one around me. And I'm hearing these strange sounds coming from underneath my feet. I'm in the middle of the mountains. You know, like, how is that possible? I've people have said things. The most common is like electrical whirring and like heavy machinery. Like what? And they're like, yeah, like the ground is actually like vibrating. Like there's like a big old, like, you know, like a forklift or something, like, you know, 20 feet below me. Like what? Just weird stuff. Or like, just other weird, it's really almost like we're living in an X-Files episode. Just weird mechanical, electronical noises that they just like, I don't know.
I mean, in the way we are here, we feel like you only have to look at nature to get answers to some of these mysteries, quote unquote mysteries. You know, there's animals in nature who have adaptive camouflage. There's animals in nature who can echolocate. Humans can even be taught to echolocate. There's a video of a blind guy who taught himself how to do it, navigating the course on a bicycle, just going on clicking with his tongue. And some things are out there mysterious and you can't answer them. Totally 100% will yield on that. But some of these things, I think there's a simple answer like echolocation, adaptive camouflage, and things like that. But you get so much pushback when you try to explain things and say, well, there's a logical explanation for it.
I don't understand the pushback, because how can you give pushback on something that we're all just speculating? Like none of us know. Like we're just doing our best guess. And it's weird to me that people are like so adamant about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, isn't that science to begin with? I'm like, science is just data. And I'm like, all you gotta do is look at data and be like, well, hey, this is our best guess of like things that are going on. But I tell people this, I'm like, we'll never know the truth. We'll never, ever know the truth. Yeah. I firmly believe that there's so many things that are hidden from us purposefully that will we'll probably get puzzle pieces. And I feel like the people who get close to the truth, well, they commit suicide. We all know how that goes.
Yeah.
So
and we say this all the time. Yes, theory and conjecture. What?
Yeah.
Just because I think that does not mean that's what it is. It's just in my mind, that's how I can reason out that, okay, you hear all these, what if it's echolocation? Yeah.
I agree with you. No, I agree.
Hey, Josh, I got a weird one for you from right here in Missouri.
Oh.
Years ago, when I was in high school, I was part of a cave crawling group. We would go around exploring caves.
Mm-hmm.
We heard about one down by Grove Springs, Missouri. It's between Lebanon and Grove Springs. It's out in the middle of nowhere. If you don't know where it's at, you're going to be hard pressed to find it. It's back miles off the highway on gravel. It's called Smittle Cave.
Oh.
So we get out there to talk to the Smittle family who own the land. Come to find out, they were involved in a legal battle with the state of Missouri. State of Missouri was trying to take their land because of the cave on it. Turns out this cave is the 5th largest cave in Missouri. State of Missouri cited endangered brown bats. Okay. And ended up taking their land. The Smittles lost in court. We go back out there a year and a half later, because at the time you could walk into this cave. We go out there about a year and a half later, and the state of Missouri has done this. And please tell me this is for bats. That's a person for scale down there.
If it's bats, I'm really curious as to why
you could have drove a semi truck into that cave.
Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot make this stuff up.
And this is anchored into the bedrock with concrete. You can't get a vehicle up there. You could have put up a chain link fence and kept people out.
Well, it doesn't look like they're trying to keep. It doesn't look like they're trying to keep something from getting out. It looks like they're trying to keep people definitely from getting in. Like, you cannot get in here. But why? Yeah, why?
And those bars, those steel bars on there are they're square. When you get up close to them, you can tell they're square. They're about 4 inches by 4 inches, and it's welded. The whole thing is welded together. There is no way this is just to keep a person out.
People show me this stuff all the time. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, not you, but I'm just like, yeah. I mean, like, I agree with you. Like, there's fishy stuff going on, dude. They know. They have to know.
If you look up Smittle Cave on the Missouri Department of Conservation's website, they have this really nice story about how they discovered these endangered bats, and the Smittle family donated the land. No, that's not what happened. I knew the Smittle family.
That's PR.
Yeah, the Smittle family fought hard to keep that land because it's been in their family for generations, and now you can't find them. I don't know if they left state, where they went, but state of Missouri got that land and they're gone.
Wow, man. Obviously, I think a lot of us are in the know that there's something going on, dare I say, beneath the earth to an extent, just like with the cave systems. I am aware on a non-paranormal level, like, obviously I'm very aware that there's human trafficking going on, like cartels and stuff like that. That's been happening for God knows how long. But on the paranormal side, I feel like we have so few information on that because so many of the experiences, encounters, and things we know of the paranormal and cryptids is all above ground. Very few of it lies underground, and very few of it ever gets out. One of the biggest things that come to my mind is Lemuria. I think it's Lemuria, under Mount Shasta. But that's like to the extent of like my knowledge in terms of like underground and like, but it makes you wonder. I'm like, so many people talk about that too. And I'm like, is there a whole thing that we're just like not, that we're not like catching on to? Obviously, like one of the more famous missing 401 cases that comes to my mind. And for those of you listening, you might know exactly what I'm talking about because it's like all over the place. Forgive me because I don't remember the name, but as soon as I say the details, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It was a little boy that was taken underground, and he was asked to poop on like a sticky piece of paper. And I remember him telling the officers or the search and rescue personnel that there's like this old lady that brought him down to into like this cavern or tunnel or something like that. And there's a bunch of I'm hoping I remember the details here. A bunch of like old equipment or something, and that she had like this weird light coming out of her forehead and just really weird stuff. And it's like But apparently, he had been missing, I want to say for like a few hours. Again, correct me, I might be wrong on that. But he was missing for a very short amount of time. They found him again, I think it was like by this berry bush. And they're like, where'd you go? And he's like, yeah, like this lady took me and we went underground and made me poop on this piece of paper. And like nobody could figure it out. It was the weirdest thing. And obviously, you know, the biggest thing with a lot of the 411 things too are like, you know, when the kids talk about the bear man and like, you know, them finding their corpses, you know, 29 miles away, you know, up a 1 mile cliff. It's like something's going on that and the words of George Carlin, it's a big club and we ain't in it. So it's true. You know, we're not allowed to know. Honestly, those kind of things really keep me up at night. They really do. Cause I'm like, I think part of it is not so much like what is it, but it's more so that what we'll never, as a public, we'll never know the truth. And you think like there's so much money behind it. There's so much money keeping that. Can you imagine if the general public like was told that these things are like happening and it's very common and that there's things in the national? Oh my gosh, like they would they would probably go bankrupt literally probably over the course of days. And
we talked about that with there's 87 billion acres of national forest.
Million, not billion.
Million, excuse me.
You said billion. I'm like, God dang, that's a lot of land.
Well, where the billion comes from, it's a $33 billion a year industry. So
yeah,
87 million acres that a lot can go hidden in, but they make $33 billion a year in you know, camping and recreational stuff and things like that. So yeah, that's a big chunk of change that the government would stand. You know, number one, they lose to the normal, average, everyday person that was like, I ain't taking my family out there. But then they have to deal with all the goofy, crazy people like us that want to go out there and hunt them and find them and photograph them, and then the ones that want to go out there and shoot them. And you know, it would be a big paradigm shift for stuff like that.
Yeah, one of my favorite rabbit holes, and I only say this because I actually haven't really dove into it. It's something I wanted. It's on my to-do list. People have talked about Theodore Roosevelt, you know, with the establishing of national parks, that he was in cahoots. He knew stuff was going on. I don't know nothing about that. I've only heard that, but I'm like, oh, I really want to. One day, I want to really like dive into that rabbit hole because it's so fascinating.
I've been down that rabbit hole. I've
got
a whole conspiracy theory behind it.
Tell me, I want to hear. That's why we're here.
All right. Well, one of the earliest accounts we have of written accounts of a Bigfoot killing somebody is the Bowman incident. The Bowman incident is about a trapper that went up in the mountains of Montana with his partner, and they went into a valley where the natives are like, hey, you probably shouldn't go up there. One of them gets killed. Bowman flees. This story was recorded in Teddy Roosevelt's book, The Wilderness Hunter. It was released in about 1882, something like that. Book's still available. You can get it on Amazon. But the book's called The Wilderness Hunter. Teddy Roosevelt related this story that he had, quote unquote, been told while he was out on because he was a big hunter, big trapper, outdoorsman. Everybody knows that. But he was the first one to relay a written account of a Bigfoot killing somebody. Well, here's where I kind of jump off the rails a little bit. Teddy Roosevelt had not gone into politics yet when this book was released. I think he was Bowman simply because the level of detail in the story. You get little details that you wouldn't get from somebody just relaying stories around a campfire. You get where they set their traps. You get how they built their lean-to. I've grew up. My family's all hillbillies. You don't get that level of detail out of hillbillies. You know, you'll get this. Well, the one time at deer camp, they don't tell how they built the fire ring. They don't tell which direction their tent was facing. They'll tell you it was deer camp.
There you go.
So the level of detail out of this Bowman incident makes me believe that Teddy Roosevelt was Bowman. And he had political aspirations, and he didn't want to admit that his partner had been killed by a Bigfoot because he would sound crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you can accept that Teddy Roosevelt knew about Bigfoot before he went to office, again, one of the first things he does as president is create the National Park Service. Setting aside 87 million acres.
Bravo. That should be a movie, man. That's great.
And it gets even deeper. Okay.
Well, go on.
While Teddy Roosevelt was leading the Rough Riders up San Juan Hill, he met a guy from Arkansas. The guy from Arkansas told him stories of the Ozarks Howler.
Mhm.
Teddy Roosevelt became so fascinated by the stories of the Howler, he came back to the Ozarks with this guy. Okay, ended up joining a secret society out of Arkansas. It's a global society. It exists on like 6 continents. It's called the secret. One of the known names of the local names for the Ozark Howler. They called it the Hoo Hoo. Don't know why, but that's what they called it. This secret society is called the Concatenated Order of the Hoo Hoo. And Teddy Roosevelt ended up becoming one of the president of this secret society. And it said Roosevelt set aside the Ozarks National Forest specifically as a preserve for the Ozarks Howler.
Whoa. Wow, man.
And he's one of 2 U.S. presidents that's been a member of that society.
Who's the other?
Woodrow Wilson.
Interesting. Wow, man. Honestly, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a darn good theory. I mean, I wish we had conclusive evidence of that. I'd believe it, because you're right. Like you make the details about how would he know all these things. The more you talk about it, isn't that the one where he's like, I don't want to say kidnapped, but he has to stay in their camp for several days, right? And the Bigfoot's like interested in like something of his, and he has to like
they get to the camp. Like the first night, no, that's
like a can of beans, right?
That's the Albert Ostman incident where he got abducted and carried off. I was
thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, but the Bowman incident, the first night something comes into their camp, and then the next night something's like rifling through their packs and they shoot at it. It takes place over several days, and they finally get tired of whatever this is coming around that's getting dangerous. Right. They decide they're going to pack up their stuff and leave. Well, Bowman goes out, quote unquote Bowman, I think it was Roosevelt, goes out to collect the traps that they'd already put out. Actually found a couple of beavers, so he had to skin and prepare the beaver.
Sure.
By the time he makes it back to camp, sun's going down. He finds his buddy dead on the ground with gigantic fang marks in his neck, and his body's like crumpled, like it had like rolled on his body or jumped on his body. And
my gosh.
So he grabbed what he could grab and ran.
I don't think it was the Ost one you were talking about. That's terrifying, man.
Yeah, look up the Bowman incident. Bauman, Bowman.
Wow.
It's a great story.
I'll just make Josh do it. So for those that don't know, Josh Cutchin, he's a pretty big deal in the paranormal author world, I think. I always tell him that, because one of his books recently became like a required reading for a college course. So I was like, dude, like that's a big deal. Congrats, man.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's why I said, I'm like, dude, you should be proud. Anyway, he's been in cahoots with me for like last year and a half. He writes not all my stuff, but a lot of my stuff. He'll basically say like, hey, what do you think about these topics? And I give him like, those are awesome. And he'll go and like do all this research and give me like a pretty good, like, hey, here you go, a Reader's Digest kind of version. And he has access to databases that I'm like, how do you even get a hold of this stuff, dude? And he's like, well, I just know people. Like, of course you do. Like, oh gosh, Rosales, I can't remember his first name. You guys might know him. Anyway, he has a huge humanoid database. He's like really good friends with my guest, apparently. He's just a great dude to network with, and has all these things. He's the one who kind of turned me on to many of the things. One of them that comes to my mind, obviously the Ostman case, but the Hexham Heads, which is for those that don't know, is like one of the bigger UK like paranormal mysteries, right? Basically, back in the 70s, these kids dig up these, I guess they're like clay heads, and like a bunch of like weird paranormal stuff starts happening to them as soon as they dig them up. And of course, it's very X-Files in the sense of where like the heads go from like person to person, and the things that are attached to the head supposedly follow these people around. And sure enough, like the heads get confiscated. We don't know where it's at now, and so like they can't be found. It's just like, wow, it's a wild ride. Another one that comes to my mind, gosh, I wish the Wallington Gnomes, or the Wallerton Gnomes. That's another crazy one too. There's so many. There's so much stuff that you kind of like when you're in this field, you don't just like dabble in it. You like dive in, and it's like there's just so much, right? And then the more you dig, you kind of find out all of this is interconnected somehow. Like, I don't know, like somehow, some way, like the Fae, right? A lot of people, again, they don't know about that. That's a huge thing. I'm not really knowledgeable on the Fae. I know little bits. Josh is like an expert on it. He knows so much. Yeah, and that's what's really interesting about that is that's not something like that I ever hear talked about over here in the States, right? You talk to people like in the UK, Wales, Scotland, they're all like, oh yeah, we have stories, and like this, it goes hundreds of years back. It's just the stuff's been going on for a long time, man. It's going on a long time. I don't know how much you guys know about the Book of Enoch, but there's a lot of interesting things in that. I'm not going to go deep into that because that could require tons of time. But long story short, for those that aren't aware of what that is, it's basically it's a part of the Apocrypha, which is a series of books that were excluded from the Protestant and Catholic Bible, and it talks about a lot of things from a spiritual perspective, like the Nephilim and things like that don't exactly pertain to, say, like the gospel of Jesus Christ. It goes into more of, like I was saying, like just the spiritual side of things. Anyway, it's just really interesting. It kind of gives a lot of insight into some of the things that are like, oh, wow, okay, interesting.
A lot of people don't realize just how many books were left out of the Bible at the Council of Mycenae. We got a $10 super chat from Josh Dalton. He says, DA, you left out the curveball in the Hoo Hoo Society, deep ties to the timber industry. Yeah, the Hoo Hoo Society still exists. The only way to join is by invitation only, and you have to work in the timber industry.
Oh, there you go. Dude, the timber industry alone, I can't tell you how many stories I've read over the course of time of like guys who were working in the timber and they see things they shouldn't have saw. They get killed somehow, something happens. I mean, not to, like, those guys are already rugged and tough dudes as it is. I'm like, that's a hard job. Like, you're out there in the elements. So if anybody out there has worked in timber, mad respect. It's a tough job, but yeah, I've definitely heard some pretty hair-raising stories, or I should say I read some pretty hair-raising stories from people who used to log and, work in that sort of environment. Not just Bigfoot too, but what I've heard called the strange supernatural forces, right? Unseen forces, I guess you would call it, things moving in the woods that you can't see, things that are like camouflaged, large dark shadows. Dogman, obviously. I think one of the weirder ones I remember coming across, and I wish I can remember which show this was on. You eventually hear and read so many that you start to forget where exactly you found what. But if I'm remembering correctly, it was a crew of like 2, maybe 4 men. They were like deep in the woods. It was nighttime. That these were guys working in timber. And I don't know if they were driving some sort of machinery. Well, like this dogman had tried to break in and try to like open up and tear him out or something like that. And he was so terrified. And the one dude turned on the light from the thing in front of him. And gosh, I think that was on Vic Hunt. If I can't remember though, it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, if you guys dig, you can find it. You can find it. But I
find stuff I've never heard of all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be going down a rabbit hole and pull on a thread that's something else. I'm like, oh, what is this?
Yeah. I think, and this is, I wish there was more on it, because this is probably like one of my favorite topics that I don't really talk about because there's so little on it. There's so little on it, and it's kind of like a dead end. It's the Scape Ore Swamp incident. And I can't remember his name.
Just a few miles from where Robbie lives.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that
like, a little more than a few miles, but yeah, same state.
So interesting, and that's probably the most disappointing one for me, because it's like, oh my god, and then it's like, oh that's it, that's all there is. Yep, dead end. Like, no, there's got to be more, but
here's the crazy part about that. Robbie can add to that for you stuff that's not in the general public domain. Oh. Tell them about the old boy that hunts down there and
yeah, I want to hear.
The guy, my buddy that was first on my co-host on my show that I do, he goes and hunts alligators not far from where that area is. So we got to talking about the possibility of it being, a humanoid, but it kind of surviving on the same plane as alligators. And he said, he gave an example that they were hunting, and they were in about 2 feet of water in a little pirogue, standing up hunting. And his guide said, right down there, right below you, there was a 500-pound, 10-foot alligator in 2 feet of water. And they didn't see it until the guy just happened to look over and see it. They harvested that thing. Something that big can hide in that little amount of water. What else can be out there?
At that point, you're considered lunch. I wish I can remember where it was. My family and I want to say it was like early 2021 when we went down to Florida. I took him down to the Everglades National Park, and it's so crazy because like you're on this concrete path, and there's like 5-6 foot alligators literally like 2 feet away from the concrete path, and they're just hanging out. You can walk right by them. Obviously, you don't touch them, but I'm like with my kids, who are like 2 and 4. I'm like, but it's like, holy crap, like that is a flipping alligator right there. Like we are in the wild. It's just crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
I feel like when you have those kind of experiences, it kind of takes you back to where you're like, we're so used to being at the top of the food chain, and it's like, it kind of grounds you like, holy crap, like we're not invincible like we think we are. That thing wanted to. I'd be dead so quick, or they'd be dead. It wouldn't even be a big deal. And yeah, like I said, it really just kind of grounds you and makes you kind of like respect. It brings that back to like, okay, I need to definitely be aware of my surroundings. I can't be comfortable, at least to an extent,
But I mean that just hammers home the point that people say, oh, these. If something that big can be that close to 2 people in 2 feet of water, something that is born with a natural ghillie suit, or something that is born with the natural adaptive camouflage, like a lizard man would probably be, if it lives in the swamp right there, it's going to be colored to survive in that swamp and to blend in.
Well, that's what I'm saying too. And it's like, when you're dealing with something that's so used to that environment, especially in like the scape or swamp situation, you never see it coming. You can look and look and look. You never even know. I really want to find out and like hear more accounts. I've obviously, from some of my older episodes, I've read a lot of what people call the Gator Man, which is very interesting to me. That people talk about like not a reptilian, but it's almost like a half gator sort of thing. And it's weird, but that's also different than the Honey Island swamp monster. It's also different than, the skateboard, like what they saw at Skateboard Swamp. To my knowledge, I don't think I've ever gotten any accounts that were around or in the skateboards, which is really interesting considering at the time in the 80s when that happened, that was a pretty big deal for the area. I mean, it's obviously still stuck. It's such a shame he got murdered in like 2005 because like I bet he would have been on so many shows and
there was a lot of shadiness to his murder too.
Really? See, I thought it was just like
and I can't remember who wrote the book. I'll find out from Lance though and let you know. But when we did our show on it, and it may be on that show, but a guy wrote a book about it, and I can't remember who it was, but it was a fairly famous author that does a lot of cryptid stuff. And a lot of those people that had those encounters, like the lady who got her front bumper chewed up,
that
kid that got his car. So the lady that had her car chewed up came out first. It looked like she was the first witness, but the boy that got his car stomped on, basically, it actually happened to him first. But he was like, I'm not telling anybody that. And then the lady came out and started talking about her car getting chewed up, and he was like, and she was kind of describing some stuff. He's like, well, hey, this happened to me. But that lady died kind of mysteriously. That boy got broke in on and murdered in a botched home invasion. But there's actually been some sightings, I think 2021 down around that area. There's an old guy that lives right on the edge of that I think it's the Air Force base that's right down around that area. He lives right on the edge of the property, and he's kind of like obsessed with it. So people go to, if they have any kind of sightings or find any footprints, they kind of go to him. He's just like that resident expert, I guess, local expert.
Sure.
And I think the last interview I saw him do, it was like 2021, was somebody had come to him and said there was a sighting and there were some footprints. And I think he went and maybe found what was left of some of the footprints, the 3-toed tracks, but it wasn't enough to get any kind of casting on or anything. But he said that there was a pilot that was actually taken off in a like a little crop duster Cessna type thing, and it supposedly ran across the runway in front of him, and he had to kind of take off quicker than he had planned on, so he didn't run it over with the plane.
Gosh, man.
So there are some recent things about it. You just got to kind of look for them. And actually, I want to say in 2019 that the county that's in, they actually did a little, I guess it didn't put it on social media, but it was kind of put out there, and it was kind of like a little meme type thing, where, like, you know, if something goes wrong here, you do this. If you see the lizard man, you do this. But they've kind of like built on that legend and kind of used it to give themselves some Lee County. That's the name. That's what county it's in.
Yep.
And they've kind of used that to kind of help themselves gain a little popularity.
Wow. It almost makes you, you know, speaking about that, it's also interesting too, because I want to say it's like in Oregon law or Washington state law where it's like you're not allowed to like poach Bigfoot. And I'm like, people just think it's a joke thing, but no, it's like it's a legitimate law. And I'm like, for something that doesn't exist, like, why is that there? It's just, I don't know, it's just interesting. And I know a lot of people are like, well, come on. I'm like, right, like I get it, but again, like, why even waste your time putting that in there? You know, I don't really see many other parts of the law that are memes, you know,
Right.
like that would be like the only
Florida,
one. So
it's illegal to hunt the skunk ape. In Oklahoma, there's a $3 million bounty on one brought in alive. There's lots of states that have legislation in place that concern Bigfoot. And why would they do that? It's not just a joke.
No, what, like, why? And it takes time to set this. Like, why? You're just wasting everybody's time to do that. I'm like, they don't. The law doesn't troll. So,
right.
Yeah, it's weird to me. I'm like, man, like I don't know. Again, these are the things that my wife and I go back and forth. She just won't have it. So I'm like, come on. But again, you know, the ball can go ahead. Good.
I was gonna say my wife was really, you know, considering what I do and what I write. What was funny was my wife was pretty much a skeptic and on the fence until back in July we spent a week up in the Smoky Mountains and got up one morning and outside our cabin was a 21-inch track in the soft ground.
Oh my gosh!
I'll send you pictures of it.
Yeah,
about an inch and a half deep, 21 inches. About 21 inches long. So you can see clearly see the 5 toes and the arch.
No thanks. I think if it sounds like, hey, listen, you've never had an encounter, right? I'd say like, yeah. They're like, I think if someone were to genuinely invite me to a very active spot to see one, I don't know how much I want to see one. You know, I'm like, listen, I read enough of them that I'm like, I believe. Like, you trust me, I believe, but I think I'm happy believing, you know, like, under the safety of the veil that I'm in, you know, because it's like there's the aspect of the unknown. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And I've read some pretty horrible stories of people having almost like life-threatening situations happen or things go awry like that quick. And they weren't expecting it to. And I'm like, you know, knowing my luck, I'd be that one guy, famous YouTuber gets mauled by a bear. You know, it's like, that's not about to be me.
Well, you know, there are historical accounts of people being killed by these things.
Oh yeah.
There was one that we profiled on the show from back in the 1820s that happened in the along the Florida-Georgia line in the swamps. There's of course the Moss Mountain Massacre that happened down in Arkansas.
I'm not
are you familiar with
that one?
Oh, no. Wow. It was a naturalist named Thomas Nuttall. He cataloged plants and wildlife. Brilliant dude, well published for his day. He led an expedition in the early 1820s, like 1819, down through Arkansas to catalog wildlife and plants. This is a big expedition. It's not like a small group.
Right.
They get into an area. Well, before they get to the area, they all started getting sick. They were getting sick from like mosquito bites and shit.
Oh, gotcha.
But
Yeah.
so they camped out at this area called Moss Mountain. And there was more than a dozen people in their group. Well, while they're camped out on Moss Mountain during the night, Nuttall wakes up and these gigantic hairy things have come into camp and kill everybody except for 4 that escaped.
Oh, they just happened to flee in time, huh?
Yeah, they ran.
How many people were in this like
More than a
expedition? Like
dozen.
18? Oh wow! Oh my gosh! Did he go into detail how or?
He went into a lot of detail, but he was pretty thoroughly discredited. But the story is called, of course, how they turn on people as soon as they point out something. He was a noted naturalist until he pointed out something they didn't agree with. But it's called the Moss Mountain Massacre. It happened, I believe it was 1819.
I'm gonna write that down, dude. That's
there's I think you could do a whole episode on the Moss Mountain Massacre.
I just wrote it in our little like chat thing, just so that way
Nice.
I have a little note for like, that's there's some meat and potatoes there, man. Like sometimes it's like hard to find these stories. But when you find them, go ahead.
What was the other one we talked about, DA, with the Native Americans and the 2 villages were getting raided by the Bigfoot, and the white man and the Native Americans kind of teamed up. And remember, the Native Americans, the smallest one of them was like 6'7".
Oh yeah, that was
really, real good horsemen.
Yeah, that was the Choctaw Bigfoot War.
Yeah,
the Oklahoma Bigfoot War.
Yeah, I'm writing these down.
That's a great story.
Yeah,
Choctaw Bigfoot. Well, I'm just gonna put that.
What's funny about that one, Josh, is we were talking about that story, and as we're talking about that story, here's more light bulb moments started going off. Come to find out, the setting for the first Wild Hunt book is right where that happened. He never even knew it when he was writing the book until we started talking about it and pulling up maps and looking. He wrote that.
It was just within a few miles of where I set my first Wild Hunt book. And that was just completely by coincidence. And that area, even today, is a Bigfoot hotspot. That's within just, I don't know, it's within about 20, 25 miles of the siege of Honobia. You heard of that one?
No.
About the family that got laid siege to in their house by a clan of Bigfoot down in southeastern Oklahoma?
No,
dude, you need to know this story.
I do need to know this story.
It's called the siege of. Well, okay, Oklahoma spelling and pronunciation aren't always similar. It's spelled Honobia. It looks like Honobia, but it's pronounced Honobia. It's kind of like. If you look at the word M-I-A-M-A,
that's not a wash, Matt. There's a honeybee.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you look at the word, like Miami, M-I-A-M-I, Miami, Florida. In Oklahoma, it's Miami.
Whoa.
Yep.
If you say Miami, they just look at you like you got a third arm growing out of your neck.
I've never been to Oklahoma. That's interesting. Wow. So, tailing off what you guys are,
light horsemen, I think is what the.
Yeah, the light horsemen.
Tailing off what you guys are talking about the deaths. There's one story that I remember. I wish I could remember the individual, but he had gone on like a volunteer search and rescue. Well, anyway, long story short, they found the dude or what was left of him, and basically his head had been twisted off his body and like laid on a stump. And I guess when like the team flew in, because he had found the guy, and they're like starting to take it down, and he's like, what did this? And they're like, oh, it was a bear. He's like, I know this wasn't a bear. And they just looked at him, their eyes were, they're like, it was a bear that killed him. And it's like, holy crap. That was like one of my first big ones from like, holy crap. Like, stuff's going on. Another big one, or I should say bigger cases are, and Bettina Moss, shout out to her, because she actually kind of brought to light some of these for me, is the what they call wild dog attacks in Tennessee, where like not people are just getting attacked.
Reports on those.
Yeah, yes. So you know what I'm talking about? Like where families are like found, like their house is broken into, and apparently some wild canine, unknown canine, I don't know, just happen to
pack of dogs
like,
are just breaking into random houses.
And not just like kill, like people are shredded pieces.
Well,
they're
the one
shredded.
woman was missing 40% of her tissue. 40%.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you know how much how much carnage and a massacre that, like, there had to have been so much blood. I can't even imagine that's a butchering at that point. That's not just as simple, oh, here's a scratch, oh, you're gonna bleed out, oh, rip your throat out. No, like that's a full-on Jason Voorhees level.
That's like completely abraded your thigh. I mean, like bone down to bone. You lose 40% of your tissue. That is a lot of freaking tissue to lose.
Well, she was probably eating on, I would imagine.
Oh, that's definitely fed on. That's pushing half your body mass.
Yeah, and that's not the only one. I mean, she was telling me about, like, there were several, but they're not gonna. They're just like, oh, it's an unknown canine. We don't know. You know what it is. Come on, man. They know.
Well, in today's society, to use the term unknown canine.
Yeah, especially when we have all known canine species in the DNA database.
Yeah, what is
how is it an unknown canine?
They don't know.
Because even if it's a mutt, a dog that's got mixed parentage, they're going to be able to go, oh, it's part German Shepherd, it's part Australian Shepherd, it's part Chihuahua. They can point out what parts it is. But to say unknown canine, that means it's not in the database.
Well, I think too, I'm like, I can't tell you a time where I've ever heard of where it's just cat. I'm like, oh yeah, you just had this unknown canine to just break into this person's house and like maul them to death and feed on them and then leave. Because that happened, that's apparently a common thing.
It's like knock, Avon calling. Yeah.
My gosh, it's like,
I'm just a Chihuahua, man. It's a rabid canine. I'm just a Chihuahua, ma'am. Yeah. Oh, it's a Chihuahua. Let him in.
So the fun fact about that one is it's where there's a lot of Dogman stuff. Tennessee and Kentucky, man, like, screw those. Listen, they're beautiful states, geographically speaking, gorgeous states, right? It's like when I went down there to go hang out with my friend Alan, he's that photographer that I did the interview with, I was like 2 months ago. You guys can, anyone who's watching this can go check that on their own time. He's based in Nashville, and so he's the reason why I had gone down to Nashville the first time. And it's so crazy when you're used to the woods up here versus down there. It's a totally different world. Like the woods up here, if you just Google PNW woods or like Pacific Northwest woods, Oregon woods, whatever, things are spaced apart. It looks like Bigfoot woods. That's why I call them. It's like a lot of, fir and pine. It's spaced. But you go down there, it like when you're driving Nashville and you look up on the hills, it looks like the flipping Polynesian jungles. The foliage is so dense and thick. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, when we first got here and we're weed whacking our way through the mountains, how the heck did people ever, like, it is so dense. I can't even imagine how dark it is at nighttime. I didn't even want to go up in the mountains. I'm like, dear God, it's just like so crazy. And anyway, it's just crazy to me how, a couple thousand miles, there's that much of a difference in just the overall plant and tree life. It's like, my gosh, man, there's so much room for things to hide. And circling back to what we were talking about, I know there's tons of caves down there. I think it's a lot of limestone caves, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Because up here we got lava tubes. I went spelunking in one of the more well-known ones up in here. It's called the Dead Horse. And there's a lot of ones that are like, it freaks my wife out because she's like, I can't do that. But I'm like on my hands and knees on my stomach. Like, it doesn't bother me. But if I have to like rappel down, whatever you want to call it, no, there's no way. Wearing the harness, no, I ain't doing that. But I'll crawl for sure. But when you're down in the caves, you're like, is something else down here with me? Because they're old lava tubes that have been down there forever. Yeah, no thanks.
That was the view from the deck of our cabin up in the Smokies. And it was that way any direction you wanted to look.
No thanks. I mean, it's beautiful, but no, I don't want to be camping in it. I don't want to stay in it. No thanks. It's wild, man. But that's where a lot of the weird stuff is. You have to go to those places to do it. People have talked to me too. They're like, why don't you go out to these places? I'm like, I could, but the issue is that it kind of becomes more of like a finding Bigfoot situation. And I'm like, it's been there, done that. There's people that do it. Oh,
And
there you go.
That was right outside our cabin too.
Nice.
I sat out
Yeah.
on the deck the evening before, and Robbie's mentioned that I do this tongue pop. I can do it really loud. Well, I sat out there and popped my tongue, and I've got a noise filter on my mic. It's called Crisp. I'd have to shut it off for you to be able to hear it on the microphone, but I can pop my tongue like super loud, as I used to hear it when I was a kid, and I figured out how to do it. So I did that on the deck. Didn't hear anything. Didn't think too much about it. We go to bed that night, and I was laying in bed reading, and she went to the bathroom and said something grunted at her outside the bathroom window. And I was like, it's probably a bear, because there's black bears all over the place.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, maybe. And then she crawled back in bed, and then something hit the side of the cabin real hard, like 3 times, like boom, boom, boom. So I go running like upstairs so I can look out the windows and shine my flashlight around. I don't see anything. But the next day, I get up next morning, I'm out on the deck having a cup of coffee, and I look down, and right outside that bathroom window, what she got grunted at was that.
Wow. That's wild, man. Literally, that is a wild man.
That's my business card next to it for scale.
That's a big boy or a big woman.
It is a big rascal.
And Josh, just to give that perspective, we measured a standard business card. And that track is 3.5 business cards long.
I'd believe it, man. Yeah.
That's big. My daughter's boyfriend is 6'8", and he wears a size. What I say, DA size 18, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He wears a size 18, and we put his foot up next to 3.5, or his shoe up next to 3.5 business cards, and it was that much longer than his foot. And he's 6'8".
Wow.
And it was an inch and a half into the ground.
Yeah, so you definitely got to factor in the weight for the ground indentation. That's wild.
And
again, man,
soil.
Again, like you talk to the tribes around there, they're all like, yeah, what do you want to know? Matter of fact, to them, it's new for us. But on that note, why isn't there like any stories of these beings? Okay, and for anyone listening who knows more about this than I do, like, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know of any like Bigfoot or wild man stories in the UK. I've never heard of any of them. I've heard of Dogman. I've heard of everything else, but not like Bigfoot. It's like,
you've never heard of the gray man of the Cairngorms?
No. That's what I said. Like, please, like I've just never heard of any of them.
The gray man is a Bigfoot-like creature that's been spotted in the mountains in Scotland. It's been spotted by scientists. It's been spotted by people from all walks of life. It follows people in the mist. I can't remember the name of the exact mountain, but it's in the Cairngorm range. But they call it the gray man, and people will report hearing it pacing them. Hear the gravel crunching as it walks. These are very rocky mountains. Eric Saab says they're called wood woes in the UK. Yeah.
Whoa.
But the gray man of the Cairngorms is a very old story from Scotland, and it dates back a long time. People have been seeing it for a long time. It's Scotland's lesser known cryptid.
And on that note, while we're on the topic of Scotland, there's a secret society there that this is like a really good segue. And I'm trying to remember. I can pull up the name of them real quick because I don't remember what they were called. They basically they perform rituals and they summon these like shadow entities, and that they're an ancient secret society that's lived in the Highlands of Scotland for a long time. Oh, we got hold on, no conversation. Oh, awesome, cool.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, you guys got some love. Anyway, it's just fascinating to me that like this secret society, is this it? Yes, this is it. And anyway, like I was saying, yeah, they apparently like do this really horrific ritual to cats, believe it or not, for some reason. And apparently it summons these shadow entities of some kind. And I'm not exactly sure why, but then they use them for their bidding. But it's like, is it just me, or is there like secret societies going on for days here? I had no idea that was a thing. Man.
Stoner Paranormal Investigations, they're from the UK. They told me the name of that mountain. It's the Ben McDwee Gray Man. And I've got it up on screen if you want to write it down.
Here, I'm taking notes, people, live, because there's a lot of good stuff here. If anyone who's watching this on YouTube, please like bomb us with stuff in the comments of like stories to cover, because as you guys know, like, there's so many good cases and stories and things. Okay, I found out it's the Taigherm. I can't pronounce it right. Taigheirm. I don't know how to say it in the Scott. Anyway, they're like, long story short, they're a secret society that's existed in the Highlands of Scotland. The Highlands and the Western Isles of Scotland, and they summon black cat spirits. Really interesting.
That's
really interesting. Yeah,
I love Scottish legends. My family are all Northern Scots.
Oh, I'm sure they probably know about it. I want to say it's like the Scottish equivalent to like the Illuminati, but I don't know. Apparently, their worshippers had the power to summon supernatural werewolves. I don't know. There's a lot here to look through. Anyway, very fascinating.
Well, the Scottish werewolf is actually reported to be helpful.
Interesting. Yeah. See how different like the folklore and stuff changes, or the legend. The stories change. The UK.
They call it the Wolver. Wulver.
Interesting. See, they almost have a larger abundance of tales and stories than we do. Everything here is like, oh, Dogman National Parks, but they have like all this stuff that's been on for, because we all know like there's the medieval, all that stuff has been going over there for so long, and there's so much stories and stuff happening. I really want to get better acquainted with the land across the pond, as they say. In fact, a good resource for anybody who wants to read up on this stuff on their free time is called mysteriousuniverse.org. A man by the name of Nick Redfern, Paul Seaburn. There's a lot of like notable people who like write for them. Yeah, in fact, I spoke to Nick Redfern. He was actually, I was going to try and get him to write for my channel like last year, just didn't end up working out. And I've had, who's the other cat? Oh gosh, I forget names all the time. He actually wrote, he did a couple episodes for me actually. I'm trying to remember. Sorry, buddy. I'm sorry I forgot your name off the top of my head. Anyway, it'll come back to me.
I've got some stuff I need to send you too.
Yeah, I did his Skinwalker encounter. I don't know why I can't remember off the top of my head. I look so silly, especially because I'm on a live here. Anyway, he writes for them. And of course it'll probably come to me after I get off this live, of course. But anyway, yeah, he's another big writer on here. Nick, by the way, if you guys haven't checked out Nick Redfern stuff, the man like writes books in his sleep. He has like 85 books. It's insane. He's very knowledgeable on his stuff. Yeah, like I try and like in my free time just spend a lot of time just ingesting this stuff and like learning more, because it's almost like an endless hole you can dive down into. It's really gonna drive me crazy not knowing his name or not remembering his name on the top of my head. He had a really crazy Skinwalker account. It wasn't Paul, and I've covered it on my channel before. Brent Swanser, that's his name. There you go, good old Brent. Yeah, he lives in Japan. You know that?
I didn't know that.
No. Yeah, Brent. It's like in this circle, a lot of people know each other. So like when I first started to talk to you guys, I didn't know that everybody kind of like knew each other, because like it's like it is a pretty small circle. Like overall, our niche is very, very small, and unfortunately, because of that, when bridges get burned between certain parties, well, it kind of bleeds out to other other spaces. We all know about that, but it is what it is, man. What are your guys' thoughts on the Men in Black?
Robbie, go ahead. I'll let you start.
Well, we did a show on them, on what's really out there, and mysteriously the first show we did just completely blacked out. We had to do a whole other show, and then we had trouble uploading that one.
Weird.
There's just too many stories of them showing up and with consistencies across the stories. And, I think I definitely think that there are people in the government that when stories get too credible, they go in and they either tell people this is what you're gonna say happened, or this is gonna happen to you. Yeah, I think a lot of the more credible stories are shut down.
Yeah, or your whole family is just going to vanish. You know, you wouldn't even know what happened. At that point, I'm like, yeah, I'm very fortunate. I'm actually surprised that I've never been like, no one's ever been like, you know, on my door or something like that. I'm like, hey, are you so and so? And I'd be like, who the hell are you? You know, I sometimes I wonder about that. I'm like, how long can I keep doing what I'm doing before that happens? You know, because I touch upon stuff that I think a lot of people don't touch upon. There are definitely certain things that I refuse to talk about. A perfect example is I had a dude. And I feel really bad that I didn't get a chance to like let him air his laundry, so to speak. But apparently he was telling me he's like an inside op from like, I don't remember what the story he had told me, but he had like slept around with some of these like big, I don't want to say people, but he had done some digging and like slept around with some of these like high Luciferian witches and like gather a bunch of intel. And he's like, what? He's like, I need you to kind of get me on there. And we're gonna blow the whistle. I'm like, bro, I'm not about to die. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm doing that. No thing. Like, listen, I believe you. You know, I like for some of the stuff he was sending me novels of stuff, and I'm like, dude, no. I'm like, I have to, you know, I have a family. Like, I have to draw the line on some things. And so, for people that ever wonder of like, hey, like, where do you draw the line when you cover stuff? I don't know if there's like necessarily a line, but if I like start to reading and I'm like, well, you know, you just got to be careful, man. Even like doing what we're doing, we're already at risk. There's been many ufologists and paranormal researchers and authors that just suddenly died under mysterious circumstances, you know? So I always try to make like a known thing between everybody that knows me and like people who enjoy my content. I'm like, listen, I have no history of mental illness. I want to live. You know, I don't have depression, you know, like just so you know, in case something happens. I always tell them like, listen, if something happens to me, you know, I got too close to something. Hopefully that never happens. Hopefully. But, you know, again, this, yeah, I guarantee we have people watching us. Maybe not watching this live, but like just watching the field of work you do, because you're talking about stuff you shouldn't be talking about. So maybe fortunately for me, you know, I feel like one of the things that maybe trying to discredit things, and I don't know, it's hard to say. Oh, thanks for the doc, man. Sweet.
You're welcome. I think you'll enjoy those.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to send those to you for a while.
Oh, no worries. So yeah, I'm always thinking about that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, how deep is too deep? I think. I mean, I only say that I think because it's only speculative. We're not government ops who deal with this kind of thing, but it's almost like if you deal with at a certain level and you don't go deeper, then I want to say you're okay. And I can only go by experience. I really don't know what I'm talking about. Again, it's just theorizing here. But again, it's just, you see people who've like dug too deep and they vanish. You know, I'm like, what? And you kind of look at the stuff they were digging into, and I'm like, I try and not go down that road for sure. Or try to like stay away from those topics.
There was that guy that posted those videos of giants walking on the mountainside.
Andrew Dawson. Yeah. So that's a big
Great
case.
Stories.
Okay. So I have some intel to add to that. Okay. So gather around, everybody, listen to this. All right. So we're going to go back in time about a year from now. So I discovered the Andrew Dawson case. I was like, we got to cover this. So I covered it. And a lot of people completely shit all over that video. They're like, blah, 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 blah. The Y-Files already did it. Well, you know what? Listen, the Y-Files did an amazing job on their video. Amazing. But honestly, I disagree. I disagree with his conclusion that it was a hoax. And some people were saying that AJ, the guy who runs Y-Files, he was like, oh, he was a shill. You know, that was meant to be like a video that throws you off. And I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that, but I think he was just honestly been like, yeah, I think this is a hoax. And you know, he had some good points, right? Like the aftermarket exhaust or the things on the car. Like, yeah, he is right. There were a lot of things that didn't add up, but there were some things that really bothered me. The most notable being when he was like told to get in front of the camera and he's like, yeah, it's all fake. And he's like nervously looking over like someone's making it. Like, what's that about? You know, like that. Right. That's weird. There's just some things.
If you're going to come up with an admissions video, why would you be looking off camera? Yeah, like, okay, it's like, is somebody fixing to shoot me if I don't say this?
Yeah, and he was like, "Yep, it's all fake. I did it all fake," and like it just didn't sit right with me. Well, so all right, so the video airs, all that, and well, a couple months later, this girl reaches out to me and she's like, "Hey." she's like, I watched her Andrew Dawson video. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, and then she starts telling me, she's like, I was actually like a personal friend of Andrew's. And I started checking on her profile. Like she lives where I don't remember where he lived. It was in Canada somewhere. And she knew a lot of his family. I'm looking at her friends. She's a legitimate profile, legitimate person. She's got posts to go back. And so I'm like, okay, she's commenting like there's she's a legit person. And so I'm like, holy crap. So she's like, well, she's like, I don't know how much I should talk about, but she's like, Andrew's gone. She's like, I really miss him. He was really close. I don't know how close they were, like how good of friends they were, but obviously they were close. And she's like, I know that Andrew got into stuff that he shouldn't have gotten into. And I guess she kind of hinted at that she had been threatened by something, like she said military, of like what she can and can't talk about, which I was like, holy crap. And she's like, I have to be careful. She didn't say this verbatim, but she kind of like really made it out to be like, she's like, I got to be careful with what I say. I can give you a call if you'd like. I'm like, yeah, let me know when. And then I didn't hear from her. And then July came and she reached back out to me and she's like, hey, sorry, it's been really busy. She's like, let me know. She's like, I can tell you everything you want to know. And I kind of really thought to myself, I'm like, this is when I kind of got really hesitant, because I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's a good thing she didn't reach out, because I'm like, what if the ball's in their court now? Like, what if like they're using her to like get me to do something? And I'm like, people are like, well, that's paranoid. You just don't know. And so I'm like, well, do I really want to know? I don't know, man. And again, even if I found out, what am I supposed to do with this knowledge? I don't know if I really want to share it publicly, other than like in private settings, like, with you. But I'm like, so I just honestly, I never really threw the ball back in her court. I was like, oh, yeah, maybe we'll set some time up. And I kind of dropped the ball there. But honestly, I'm 100% serious when I say that genuinely bothered me. Where I was like, oh my gosh, like she was basically told that she has to keep quiet. That apparently, again, the gist here is that, from what her story is, that Andrew got too close to something. Andrew, yeah. But again, like when you're like, okay, well, if that's the case, then how do you explain like the weird TikTok, like the person watching him like driving a civilian car? There are some weird things. I agree. I don't know, man. The whole thing's so weird. But again, I was kind of done with that story. Like, I had researched it. I did my piece. It was in the past. And then for her to reach out to me and like, just say these, like, why me? What about AJ? Right. He's 10 times my size. And in my opinion, his video is way better. It's just way better done. It just, yeah. And yes, I was always like, huh. And at first, if she would have like started contacting me and like telling me everything, I probably would have done it. But after, like I said, some time, I really thought about it. I'm like, I don't know if it's a good idea if like we talk, because like, yeah, what if they're like, hey, we need you to go to talk to him and like get him to tell this stuff. You just never know, man. I don't know. You just never know. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. You just got to be careful. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I could still reach out to her. I mean, I still got her contact, but I don't know, man. Again, like if I had the information, I would never make a video on it. You kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm not about to
put
die.
A target on your back.
Yeah, that's something. I'm like, yeah. What is it going to do me? Even if she's like, yeah, the government killed him, like, and there was giants. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. What do I do with that now?
Right.
Speaking of giants, what do you guys think of the giants in the mountains of Iran and Iraq? That's wild. I'm not talking about the whole like, oh gosh, what is that? The famous
the Kandahar giant.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the overall where people and jinn, by the way, a lot of jinn stories about just weird stuff in those mountains. What do you guys think about that?
Carrie, Doc, who's usually on the show, he isn't here. I gotta wish he was here tonight. But Doc was in the Air Force. He was an Air Force Special Forces medic. Flight medic. Okay. He was a high-end medic. He's got friends who were crew chiefs and crew on bombers and supply aircraft flying in and out of Afghanistan that watched these giants on thermal as they were landing and taking off from some of these runways, and were told they couldn't talk about it.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. What do you think? Just like the government, they're owned by that. You're property of the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. So you do what you say or you do what you're told to do, and that's that. You play pawn. So none of it surprises me, especially when you say those operatives who on their deathbed are like, hey, listen, I have like a couple days left. I'm spilling the beans. You know, like, what are you gonna do? Kill me? I'm already dying. I'm gonna die here. And they, those ones, sometimes I'm like, okay, well, do they want attention? But they're like, oh, here's my clearance level. Here's this. Here are the things I worked on. Those do bother me, especially when it's quickly swept under the rug and it like loses popularity or vanishes off YouTube. It's like,
something to that. Well,
yeah, it's like, oh,
are you familiar with the Piri Reis map?
No.
The Piri Reis map is a map that was I believe he was Turkish. Was recorded by a Turkish admiral in the 1500s, and they believe he copied it from an earlier map. The Piri Reis map is a map of Antarctica without ice on it.
I think I've seen something on that. There's a YouTuber, for anyone out there who wants to dig into this stuff. There's a dude called the name of Night God 333, and this is like up his. This is the kind of stuff he digs into. So I think, is that the one I'm thinking of, where it shows the Earth and Antarctica is like actually like a ring, and then beyond it is like Lemuria and all these other things. Okay, then I have seen it.
Well, here's the thing: in the margins on that map are hand-drawn images that look like Dogman and Bigfoot.
Whoa.
Kid you not. We were just talking about it on the show the other night.
Dude, okay, so Antarctica is another one I want to cover because, I mean, again, why? Why is there a global treaty?
That's one of my favorite topics.
Dude, and I'm like, okay, listen. My father-in-law, he's really into this stuff. He's like, well, what if the Earth's flat? I'm like, I don't know, Dad. I'm like, honestly, I don't know anymore. He's like, what do you think? I'm like, well, you know, I do believe it's a globe, but again, I'm like, what if that's just because like what we're in? I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna. That's kind of where I lean, because I'm like, what else could it be? And he's like, well, what about the firmament? And I'm like, I don't know. One of my favorite things is when David Icke, and he came out with some, I think it was a book or something called Everything You Know Is a Lie. And I think to myself, like, can you imagine this entire time, like, we had been lied to about everything? What if it really was flat? Wouldn't that be crazy? It would be like how, like, I don't think most people could even comprehend it. I don't know. I can only go by like what we're told to believe. And, you know, I mean, it makes sense that it's a globe and that there's other planets, you know. I really wouldn't know how to think of it any other way, but I get, it's just like when you're talking about the map and you're showing the map and it's like, okay, well, Antarctica, like, no, it's actually like a ring, right? It's not a continent, it's a ring. And you're like, well, how is that possible? It's like, oh, by the way, the planet, like, no, it is a planet, but it's actually much bigger than we realize. Like, how is this even a thing? Oh yeah, like beyond the ice ring, there's all these other continents. What? Now I don't know. Of course, everyone's got their own speculation, but it is weird to me how like there's a wall that you can't, you know, it's very, very taboo. You can't do it. And why are all the countries in on it? I've never understood that. I'm like, what are they hiding, and why? I don't know, man. I don't know. There's so much we don't. There's sometimes I think at night, I'm like, man, what if? Right? What if? What if everything we know about space? Because then you have other things where people say, well, space is a lie. The moon's not real. The moon's actually an alien spaceship. I mean, it's just all these. And of course, I listen to all this stuff. I'm like, man, like, you just, I don't know.
Well,
it really just
a lot of mystery.
A
lot of mystery surrounding the moon. Like when we sent our first Apollo mission to orbit the moon, when they came out, the first words that they said was, Houston, there is a Santa Claus. And they've never explained what he meant by that.
Weird.
And why have we never gone back?
Right.
Oh, I did an episode about a month ago, and I'm trying to remember the two, gosh, if I wish I could remember what it was. There's two projects. Oh, here we go. There are two projects that were going on. You guys might know what I'm talking about. There's Ingo Swann, and he's like the whole psychic guy, and there apparently there was like alien beings on the moon, and he was basically picked up by the U.S. government as a psychic remote viewer. And of course, there's like two really big projects that they were trying to do back in the 60s, or at least one of them. And I'm trying to remember the name of it, but basically they were trying to like inject $6 billion to get this project to go build a base on the moon or something like that. So then I'm like, okay, well, if the moon like doesn't exist, then why would they invest that money? If everything's flat, then we can't have planets. So I'm like, well, then how would that be the case? See what I'm saying? It's like, well, then how? That's why I'm like, I guess I just don't understand. So it's like on one side, I want to like look at this side of facts, but I'm like, okay, well then, you know what I mean? Like it kind of becomes this like weird crossroad of like, where do you, I don't know. So I don't know, but it would be wild if the moon was just like a giant alien base or some sort of like, and it was just, if it was just like not even a planet, but it was his own thing. It'd be so wild to me. Uh-oh.
Just a big satellite.
Yeah. Uh-oh. What the heck? Oh. Weird, my ad block thing started to come up. I was gonna say, I'm like, oh, they got us. They're nailing us down.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Project Horizon. That's what it is. Project Horizon. Yep.
Robert D asks us if we got any ideas about flat Earth. I don't think it's flat. No, I just think that there's more going on than we're being told.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense for it to be flat. Because
honestly, I think flat Earth is an idea that they put out there to make people do this to keep them off. I think it's just a detractor. It gets people arguing about
lies
it. Yeah,
somewhere between stuff lying beyond Antarctica and the hollow Earth theory. And I don't think that means the Earth is hollow like an egg, but I think there are massive interconnected caverns beneath the Earth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my thing too. I'm like, I definitely believe that we are a globe, at least from what I understanding about court. Could we be wrong? Yeah, of course. But like you said, yeah, then maybe it's that our entire understanding of like what the globe is wrong in the sense where like everything we've been shown at our whole lives, that's just indoctrinating. Like what if there literally is an ice ring around? And they said, well, that's impossible. They have the astronauts who go into space and. Like, yeah, then of course my conspiratorial stuff. I'm like, yeah, what if they've been paid off? We don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's hard to say. No, it's probably close to what we think. At least I would hope. It's just.
Casey Calloway talking about the moon said, "Why did it ring like a bell when we landed on it?" That's one of those. I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Obviously, that's also interesting too because I've heard from so many people where we never landed on it. So I'm like, wait a minute, what? You have two different camps.
See, I that's one of those I think is just one of those details that is incorrect. I think that somebody made that up and it caught traction because there's no atmosphere, so therefore it's not going to ring. Mm-mm. You would not have heard anything.
Again, man, it's one of those things where it's like I'm not knowledgeable enough on it, and all I can do is just guess. I don't know. People ask me all the time. I don't know.
Open coloring books says we keep cutting out since we started talking about the moon.
Interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that as soon as we mentioned that. Yeah, my thing started cutting out. Huh.
Well, I definitely think that they found something that they didn't. That's why would you not go back?
Right. Oh, I just realized we have a chat. Oops. I didn't see that until now. I'm sorry, everybody. I was like, oh, there's over 1,000 comments. Just a bunch of Freemasons lying to the world. Yeah. They crashed part of the ship into it. The moon does spin. I believe so. Well, I just tried. Go ahead.
The moon is locked in orbit. It does not rotate. The side we see is the side that is always facing the Earth.
That's why there's a dark side of the moon.
Right.
It's always the dark side of the moon.
Yeah. There's one side of the moon that is never visible from Earth.
The thing that we're taught to me makes the most sense is that we're orbiting in space and there's a moon that's around us. I'm like that. So. Again, that's when we have the camps where it's like, okay, well, we never landed on the moon, but yet on the other end, it's like, well, we know we landed on the moon. There's actually like a whole like secret sector of society that lives there in harmony with other aliens. So I don't know. I've heard both camps. I don't know. To be honest, people ask my opinion about that. Well, what is it? What do you think? I'm not educated enough. I bet if I spent like tons of time and like read the books, and I'd probably come with a better opinion, but. As you guys know, that there's just too many rabbit holes to like look into and like to get knowledgeable on. I feel like I don't want to say my forte because I don't feel like I have a forte, but my interest lies definitely more in the whole missing park thing or missing persons thing and like the cryptid thing and
That's more my speed
yeah.
too. I'm not as much into the paranormal, although have been exploring it more. But when it comes to like the flat Earth and the moon and things like that, it's just it's not that I'm not interested. It's just I don't know as much about it.
Right. Yeah, that's my thing too. It's like I don't know.
Eric Testerman, he's a writer friend of mine. He says, I'm a Freemason. Me and all, I don't know a thing. And I don't think like that.
You know why? Because you're not.
Or is that what they would tell you to tell us?
Yeah. You're not a 33rd.
I'm about to say, or you're just not that 33rd. And
I'm just messing with you, dude.
And I don't know him. So, but from what I'd heard is that higher degree Masons will purposely mislead and misinform lower degree. And I'm not a Mason, so I can only go by like what I've like read and like seen about it. But it is interesting. I'm like, what is at that level? Huh? What do you guys? And this is to everybody in chat too. What do you guys think about the whole UFO disclosure back in July? I want to get all your guys' opinion. No,
it doesn't shock me at all.
It's so funny. I don't think it shocked anybody. People were just like, yeah, so. And I told the people this. I'm like, can you imagine if they came out to Congress in like 1984, how it would have shook the world, And now everyone's like, yeah, so what?
Well,
like
dude,
we knew.
We're seeing stuff like that happening with UFOs, and they've pretty much just out and out admitted it. But I think we've been seeing the same sort of things happening in the cryptid world. I think we're starting to get what I would refer to as soft disclosures. We're seeing signs popping up. Let me see if I know I saved one.
It's conditioning, man. They got to get used to the idea. Yeah. I don't think people understand
seeing more
that.
Of these Sasquatch bedding areas, warning of Sasquatch on trails. Things like this are becoming more, not just mainstream. It was like the Ohio. We've mentioned this before. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources released a 5-part video series on what to do if you encounter a Bigfoot while out in the parks. And when I first heard they did it, I thought, oh no, it's probably just done tongue in cheek. No, it is done just very serious. It's a 5-part series, and they're interesting videos. And those were released by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
Which, by the way, folks, they took time, money, and resources to like plan, shoot, edit, and put it out there. Like that seems again to troll the public. Why would you waste money as a government department? Why would you waste money doing that? You wouldn't. I don't think you would. Yeah. So like very, very weird. And again, you tell people who don't believe, they're just like, well, okay, like, come on, man, I get it. But like, at what point is it like, at what point is it so hard to make, like, okay, listen, maybe there's something like there's something here. I don't say you got to believe, just say like, okay, there's something weird going on.
Very much. No, so.
I think it's easier to be in denial. I think it is because like it's comforting. When if those things don't exist, then you don't have to. You're not susceptible. You're not vulnerable.
Well, I knew a guy for years. I deer hunted with the guy, grew up with him. We went to high school together, and I've always been a firm believer in cryptids. And he's like, "Oh no, I've been deer hunting my whole life. I've never seen anything like that." When we flash forward years later, we're both in our 30s. I run into him. I went home for Christmas. I run into him, and he pulls me to the side and says, "I need to talk to you." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "You SOB, why didn't you tell me them damn things were real?" I'm like, "You saw one, didn't you?" He's like, "Yeah, from my deer stand, and it scared the shit out of me. So I've been telling you since we were 12 they were real."
Yeah, that's the thing. It scares a lot of people. They don't know how to handle it. Even for me, that I'm in that world all the time, and I don't even want to see one. I have no desire. Why? I know they're real. I don't need to see one. And like I said, you don't know what if you're that one happening, or that case where you're gone. That they find pieces of you. No thanks. I can only imagine that. Did you guys? I'm trying to remember this story. Maybe I was the guy that he sent it to, and I don't know if he told anywhere else. But the kind of like the recap of it is that this gentleman spent a few days in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey, which, by the way, I just did a thing on New Jersey, so that's why this is like sticking out to me, and this is why this came to me. But he spent there, it was like 3 days. And anyway, like this creature smacked him in the head. And like he woke up and this thing was like carrying him on his back, and he took his 45 and shot it in the back, and he fell and like ran to safety. And it's like, oh my gosh, I got to dig that story up. I forgot I told it. It was like over a year ago. And anyway, it just sticks out to me.
One of the stories that I just sent you in that text document was from a guy I knew growing up. And the story he tells of when he went moral mushroom hunting, it's going to put chills on your back, dude.
That's why that was sounding familiar. That's one you was telling us about the other night, right?
No, it's not the same story, but he got hit in the head with a rock and knocked out.
Yeah,
he came to with it dragging him by the foot. He started shooting at it.
No, this guy, he was sitting by the creek. He got smacked in the side of the head. This thing smacked him and it knocked him out, like actually with its head. He said it felt like he was hit with like a 2x4 or something. And he woke up and he was like, I was kind of like bobbing, and this thing had it like slumped over its shoulder. And so he was dangling there, but he had just enough time to reach into his holster and grab his 45, and he aimed it at his back, and bam! And this thing dropped him, and it like took off running. And he's thinking, shit, if I don't get out of here, this thing might come back with his buddies. You know, of course, he just
was it? Was it a Bigfoot or?
Yeah, that's what he said, because he said he basically said that when he shot it, it dropped him, and he kind of like caught his bearings and looked up at this thing, and he's like, holy shit, this is a Bigfoot. Like, what else would it be? And it kind of was looking at him like in fear, because it's like, you shot me, you know, and it ran off. But why did it grab him? Yeah,
well, I don't think it was taking him to the prom.
No,
I think it's safe to assume it intended to do him an injury.
Or you never know. It could have been taking him to the prom.
Yeah, he might have been the next Albert Ostman.
I don't know, that story. I was kind of like, yo. And it was one of those stories that like you could tell by the way it was written. It wasn't like it was midnight, the clock struck what, you know, it was like very like, listen, like here's my life experience. Stormy yeah. She was aroused by the fire. You know, I'm like,
I knew an officer that used to write his reports like that. Used to crack me up.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I was the supervisor, and he'd submit this report. I'm like, dude, this is freaking hilarious, but no, rewrite this report.
Yeah, come on, man.
You think I'm giving that to the captain in the morning? You're out of your damn mind.
Let me just go rewrite this. Cop smut. That's what it is. Yeah, like I said, the way certain people write it, you can just tell her like, oh, they're like, this is the way they're like reliving the experience. And so I don't think I got a chance to talk to this cat over the phone, but yeah, that stuck out to me again, because that was it was in the Pine Barrens. I wish I could remember what year it was, but I just like am working on an episode right now. Hopefully will come out tomorrow. Anyway, it's all like New Jersey, and like the Pine Barrens is a part of it, and like, you know, the whole like Mrs. Leeds and the Jersey Devil, and that's a whole weird thing, by the way, too, folks, is like, it's fresh in my mind because I'm just doing it, or just did it, is the whole in 1909, I believe is the exact year. I might be off a year. You have like Bristol and that whole town right there, like right around the Delaware River, and they had like these sightings of like this flying demonic thing right after the whole Mrs. Leeds apparently giving birth to her 13th baby. You know, for those that don't know, 13th is like an occult number. You know, it just maybe some of it's legend, sure. Actually, no, I think she supposedly had it in the 1700s, from what I remember. Yeah. But anyway, it's just weird. It's just weird. Like, why that year? And apparently it attacked a trolley car. And I'm giving you guys the very condensed version, right? There's so much more to this, but it's just weird, man. There's a lot of weird stuff in the Pine Barrens. Speaking of Jersey, there's a reservoir, and of course I forgot the name. Apparently it's had like 26 deaths and like tons of missing persons cases. You know what I'm talking? The people, it's like central North Jersey, and it's a man-made reservoir, and I don't know how long it's been around, and it's not super deep. I think it's like maybe 90 feet deep. I don't know. Anyway, since like the 1970s, yeah, like tons of missing persons cases. Some of the most famous is a man by the name of like Chris Tromblett and a few others, and like they'd be on their like 12-foot aluminum fishing boat, and all of a sudden it would capsize for like no reason, and they couldn't be found at all. Search and rescue, scouring, never found their bodies. Nothing, you know. It's just weird stuff, man. A lot of people would say that because when the reservoir was built back, you know, when it was supposedly built on potentially cursed native land or burial ground, and it's just so I don't know. Again, there's just a lot of things. No, it's not Attila. I don't remember what it is. I really don't. Here, you know what, Lorna, just go ahead and pull it right up while you guys are talking.
Alrighty.
It's one of the bigger. Gosh, what is it?
You know, there's weird disappearances in parks and stuff all over the place. And, you know, the people go missing in shallow bodies of water like that. I mean, you can scuba that deep. Where are they going? Is something dragging them out of the water farther down and carrying them off, or they're underwater caves? Where are they going?
Oh, duh. It's called the Round Valley. You guys go look up the
Round
Round Valley Reservoir. It's actually like so crazy that it actually has a name. They call it the Bermuda Triangle of New Jersey because there's that. Oh, it's since 1971. There's been over 26 cases of people who've disappeared since 71. That's pretty significant for a reservoir, right? We're not talking about an ocean. Like that's
a shallow body of water.
Yeah, what the hell's going on? 26 people? And people are like, oh, well, you know, like, you know, I talk about this in the video because it's kind of like in a circular, like geographically, it's in a circular valley, so it can be prone to like high winds, and you do gotta account for those kind of things. But you read some of these stories. There's a case in particular. It was, I think, it was sometime in the late 76 to be exact, I believe. And these two guys, they're out there in the you know, on the water and in a 12-foot fishing boat, and there's people around them. And so it's not like that they're isolated by themselves. And of course, the boat somehow capsizes. Don't know how. And of course, the people around see this. The other fishermen, they're freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, we got to go rescue these guys. So, you know, they go over there and they get around the boat. And I don't know if these guys are jumping in or what, but long story short, they were able to find the one guy, but the one guy's gone. Never found his body. He just as if he had vanished. So it's like, how do you explain that? And then what's weird about that is when the water recedes, they brought in search and rescue on land. They brought in cadaver dogs, no pieces of clothing, bone fragment, human tissue. It's like, what? How is that possible? But like, I guess in like 2014, there's, or maybe it was back, I think it was the 80s. There were like two amateur divers who about 80 feet down found the skeletal remains of one of the divers from who had gone missing in the 70s. It wasn't the one I just told you about who capsized. Everyone saw him. It was a different one, but it's like, don't know. It's weird. Again, there's a reason it has. Go ahead.
From years ago, there was footage floating around. I want to say this was from Loch Ness. I could be wrong, but I want to say it was one of the Scottish lochs. There was a guy running a high-speed racing boat because it's so long and straight.
Sure.
And you see him just hauling ass out across the water, and all of a sudden it just goes poof and just basically comes apart.
What?
Yeah, I'll see if I can find the footage and send it to you. But it's really bizarre. I mean, it doesn't explode. It doesn't hit something. It's just hauling ass out across the water. And all of a sudden, something just kicks it up out of the water and it just comes apart.
That's wild, man. See, those are the kind of thing, like, that's kind of when you get into the whole glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing is, again, that's another huge rabbit hole. I know some of it can be explained, but then you get other things too, where it's like people are like, oh, well, you got to factor in this. And I'm like, I get some of those things. Yeah. But then I'm like, there's some things that I'm like, no, that doesn't add up to me. I'm sorry. And I get it. Like the rational mind is like, there has to be an explanation. No, it doesn't. I'm sorry. There's not always a rational explanation.
And you've got the Alaskan Triangle.
I want to mention that here too.
In the last like 70 years, like 65,000 people have gone missing in that area.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that's some rugged territory, and there's grizzly bear and all kinds of wild animals up there.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely got to factor that in, but you know that surely can't explain all.
Taking 65,000 people though.
Well, okay, let's
massive amount of people go missing.
Let's be as crazy as, but let's say that 64 of those 1,000 actually died of like natural, right? The grizzly bear. And that's obviously absurd, right? There's no way. But even if that was the case, then what the heck happened to another 1,000 people? Where do they go? Right. Honestly, I don't buy it when people are like, oh, well, of course there's grizzly bear. Well, duh. And of course, like a percentage of that is like, obviously, but I'm like, there's a problem with the ratio there. I'm like, how? I don't know, man. That's why I think the national park and like the woods is just so. it bothers me because I'm like, there's just so many what ifs. You just don't know.
Right.
You don't know why and what. Obviously, a lot of the natives around there, they talk about the Kushtaka, which is like their version. I don't know what it is.
Otterman.
Yeah, Otterman.
Yeah.
They got all sorts of stuff where it's like, oh yeah, white men come here and they screw it up because they don't know what they're doing out in the woods. And I'm like, oh, they're probably right.
Well, then there's a subject you've covered, the Nahanni Valley.
Oh, then that's
That's
the headless
creepy.
valley. That one's crazy. The headless valley.
Do you know it has a cousin?
No. What's
There's another headless valley.
Really? Where?
In the Superstition Mountains of Arizona.
What?
Yeah. There's another headless valley in the Superstition Mountains of Arizona where dozens of bodies have been found with missing their heads. And here's the great part. In the Nahanni Valley, the tribe that talks about up there is called the Dene, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Do you know what the Navajo word for themselves is? Dene.
Interesting. Very weird. So fun fact, a family friend of ours, her husband is full-blooded Navajo. I guess their parents came up here and they went back to Arizona or wherever it is that they're at. I think their reservations in Arizona. Anyway, I've asked him before about things and same thing. Matter of fact, like, oh yeah, like, you don't go outside, you don't light a cigarette butt. There's just certain that there's like,
don't whistle at night.
Yeah, there's certain etiquette you need to follow in order to keep yourself safe. And it's full on like, oh, it's not what I believe. Like, no, like I've had experiences. This is matter of fact. You just don't do these things. It's like, dude, we gotta talk more, man.
Jesus Payon was saying that when he was investigating Bigfoot on the Navajo reservation in New Mexico, they found a horse that had recently been killed that had its rear leg torn off.
Yep, I believe it. So I don't know how much I've told of this story ever because it's kind of just a small blip. My dad, I don't think I've really told much about this. So I guess it's kind of a treat for all you guys. Long story short, my dad had an experience with the skunk ape back in the Florida Everglades when he was a young guy, like probably in his 20s. One of his friends of his had lived out in this, I want to say it was a cabin, it was a house. I think it was a house near some orchards. No, it was groves. I think it was mango groves. I don't know what it was. Some sort of tropical fruit down there, whatever it is. And they're out there at night and they hear something really big ripping off branches of like one of the trees. And of course, the branches are like that thick or however big they are. And so it's like, and of course, at the time, like they were like dealing and like doing crime and stuff. So it's like that they're all very well armed. And so they go out there like, who's fucking out there? And of course, the porch light only goes so far. And because you're in the Everglades, so it's like dark. And this is the 70s. And so, yeah, they said this, they could smell, they were in the house, they could smell it. Something was around and it was like this nasty just odor. And then they heard the tree branch ripping and they go out there and of course they don't see anything. Well, anyway, the following day comes, they go out there and they see that something like has ripped this massive branch off of this tree at like, I don't know, maybe like 10, 12 feet up off the ground. Crazy. Well, it doesn't end there. So my anyone who's heard my story, or not my story, but my dad's story about my Uncle Dominic's possession story, which is absolutely insane. Unfortunately, he passed about 5 years ago due to liver. He just basically drank himself to death. And it was like right around that time, he had gone like exploring in the Everglades and apparently found like this large, I don't know if it was a dig out or a cave or some sort of subterranean environment that went underground. I don't know how far, but anyway, he thinks it was this thing's den because he said it had the same smell. It was nasty. And then kind of to add to what you were saying with the horse, I didn't get a chance to ask him how far away it was, where it was at, but he came across this meadow where he found a dead horse that had its head twisted all the way off. And apparently that really bothered him because it's like, what the heck has enough power to twist a horse's head? I mean, can you imagine the amount of force that would take?
A tremendous amount of force, because a horse is a very strong animal.
And it's a lot of tissue. Bone. I mean, like, there's just
heavy muscle, like, thick bone.
He was like, whoa, it's a bear. Bro, black bear, they don't even kill that way. Come on.
Yeah, so bears don't twist heads around. That requires hands.
No, had it been eaten on, had it been clawed, it was just dead with its head torn off. The head was gone. You could.
Yeah, if it was attacked by a bear, there'd be claw and teeth marks.
Yeah, so
that's the only way it grabs a hold of something.
I think people try to rationalize because it's like that's so terrifying. Of course, you'd want to rationalize that. To think that that's a thing. I don't want to believe that. That's terrifying. Well, anyway, but it just kind of coincides with what you were saying, and it reminded me of that. I'm like, yeah, there are things that go bump in the night that we don't know about, folks. I think that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, because I'm like, you know, it definitely fulfills me in a way where I kind of get to learn more. But also, once I saw a donkey head skinned out on the edge of town called Cape.
Been to Cape Girardeau. That might have just been the locals.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but you never know.
This is Missouri. That's not real shocking.
Yeah, that's weird. There is some. While you're on the topic of skinned heads, one of the things that gets me is when people hike on trails and they find like deer heads, particularly ones that have been like clearly like not cut off but like ripped off and like left there, and like multiple of them. That's weird to me. And of course, yeah, you're like, oh, it might just be a hunter. But then there's other stories where I've come across where people have found like deer hung up in like trees like 50 feet up. Like, pretty sure somebody wasn't dressing that out here. And it's like not like it's even been quartered or anything. It's just thrown up in a tree. It's dead. It's like hanging on a branch 50 feet up.
I always think of that scene in the movie Congo where
I think of Predator.
You know, I think in Congo when Bruce Campbell's sitting there eating that power bar and that thing hits him with an eyeball.
I don't remember that. I haven't seen Congo.
Oh, you've got it. Oh, that's such a good movie. He's sitting there and this killer gorilla throws an eyeball at him. Yeah, it's freaky. I always imagine that as like part of a Bigfoot story.
I mean, it may be. If anyone out there hunts, I think one of the biggest thing that bothers me is we all know that when the woods go quiet, it means there's obviously a predator around. So why is it that it happens? Like, how is it that the wilderness knows? Right? It's weird to me that a lot of these stories, like that, they all talk about that. Like, it's not just that it goes quiet, but that it's almost like sound ceases to even exist. Right? Even the wind stops. It's like everything holds its breath, and that it's and it's not just like, oh, hey, it's quiet. They all get the sensation like, okay, my gut's telling me something's not right. They're not always feeling watched, but something I feel it. I feel in danger. Like it's like a primitive, like I shouldn't be here. I need to leave. Whatever. I'm if I go further, I'm not going to make it out.
I've had that happen to me in the woods before. And generally it's as Robbie and Doc would say, look at the time.
Yep. Like, oh, well, time to go. Time to turn around. It's like you never wonder. My mom was actually the one who started telling me about like portals and things, and I was like, she can really definitely get into stuff that like I'm like, wow, I'm like, that's crazy. She had told me, I think they're like missing persons cases, whatever they were, that a gentleman was hiking, and I wish I had more context, so I apologize to everybody. That apparently he saw like this like what looks like a ripple, right? Like the air like ripple. Then apparently this guy like saw this like hairy hand or something come out and try to grab him, and it terrified him. I know that they're so small, like little blips of information. I wish I had more on them, but I'm like, these are the kind of things where I would hear from my mom who like reads the stuff religiously, where I'm like, man, maybe there's so much more to this stuff that we don't even know. Like what's going on? Maybe portals are a thing. Oh my gosh. And then like the more you find out, the more you wish you didn't know.
Jessica and I were in Georgia at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference, and we went up. Just the meet and greet was that Friday night. It's kind of past the time for it to be over. It's supposed to rain that night, but it didn't. So she said, "You want to go head back up the woods, see if we can get any kind of encounters or anything?" I said, "Sure, let's go." So we take off up there and went up to this one little area. We're just sitting there, standing out there talking, just having a conversation. Crickets, cicadas, tree frogs, everything's just, and I'm talking 150 decibel concert loud. We were having to like just talk louder and louder to each other just to be heard over how loud they were. So they weren't scared of us.
No,
all of a sudden, everything just like that went from way up here to nothing in a split second.
It almost makes you like cringe because you're like, no, something's gonna happen.
The hair's standing up on my arms right now just telling it, because you're like, and I got the feeling that there was something behind her. She got a feeling there was something behind me, and we're sitting there.
You probably both.
So of course I pulled my 9 out, was holding it, was beside my, not in a threatening manner, but I had just kind of like had it tucked like this. And we didn't want to just like panic and rush into anything. So all of a sudden Jessica turns and looks down towards her car. And she said, I think there's something down beside or on the other side of my car. She said, maybe we ought to get back down to the car so we don't get cut off from it. And I said, yeah, probably a good idea. So we walked back down the hill to her car, and I turned, kind of watching her finish, and she was walking up to me, and I'm looking back up where we were at. And as we're sitting there finishing talking, I look and I see a big shadow walking on two legs, walk across the clearing we were just in.
Wow. That's wild, man.
Don't know what it was. I know what it was, but I can't say for sure what it was, put it that way. So yeah, that was a wild experience.
It was large though, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those are the kinds of things, man, where it's like it really kills my desire to want to go be like a woodsman and like, spend 8 hours and like to just day after day and just document. I just, part of me, I'm like, how much of harm's way are you putting yourself in by doing this kind of thing? And that's like besides, like cougars, like where I'm at, like we have a bunch around here. My stepfather, he like will go romp around like 10 miles in the woods like it's no big. Like he's been all over here up in the Simcoe Mountains, and he's like, yeah, there's been a couple times, and he's like crazy, right? Because he like I think he's 60, 61. When he was younger, like about my age, a little younger, he used to elk guide in Idaho. And there's a big basin called the Chamberlain Basin, and he would guide professionally for like years. And obviously, then he started a family and had my wife and all those things. But he would like tell me stories. Is like, yeah, like he's so used to just like walking in the dark, like without a flashlight. He's like, oh yeah, the moon guides you. Like I don't need a light. I just figure it out. I'm like, you're nuts, Dad. Like what the heck? And so like he'll do the same thing up here. And he's like, guys, like there's been a couple times I heard something like really big following me. I'm like, are you sure it wasn't a black bear? He's like, no, it followed me for like 2 miles. And he's like, it would stop every time I would stop. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, you didn't have a flashlight with you? He's like, no. Okay. All right. That's cool. Unfortunately, obviously he like never saw it. There was one time he was up in a place called Home Valley. It's in Washington State. I don't know how big it was. Oh, I had a draft horse that was killed the same way. Oh, yeah, that's terrible, man. I'm sorry. He was up in this place called Home Valley, and I don't know if I'm trying to remember the geography of it, but I guess he's like right next to like this large steep hill. It goes down quite a ways, a couple hundred feet, and he was talking to one of his buddies, and he hears this thing scream at him, and he just looked at his buddy. He's like, because his buddy's like, what the hell was that? He's like, that was a Bigfoot. We need to get out of here. Yeah, and he tells me, he's like, I think we're too close to it. And I think they just pulled off to the side of the road. I don't know exactly what they were doing, but they were talking in that moment, and this thing apparently didn't like the fact that they were there. So, yeah. So it's like great. Like both my father-in-law and my dad both have like legitimate stories of like dealing with the supernatural. And obviously like my father-in-law, he has like some other crazy stories about like, I guess when he was younger, he had he was like on this like drug bender, and he like did a bunch of cocaine and like I guess like died on the bed. And he would like tell me, he's like, yeah, he's like, I felt my spirit leave my body and actually came out of my body, and like I was like a tethered to this thing, and just like all these crazy experiences. And he's like, no, I was like legitimately, I was dead, like I was sober, I was out of my body, and I came back in my body, and like after that, like I cleaned up my life, and I did it. That's when I started like guiding in Idaho, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like there are so many things that I think we can only see on this plane of existence. And I think everything else, I really do believe that everything is interconnected to an extent. The way I like to call it is like everything's attached to a rabbit chamber, right? And then you have rabbit holes that lead to the next chamber. And you have all these chambers with all these rabbit holes that lead deeper and deeper and deeper. And that there's just so many rabbit chambers to dive into and to try and read. And each one, it could be hours and hours of studying and reading and watching, and everyone's got a piece of the puzzle. Everyone's somewhere. It's like everybody's got a little piece here, and all of us in this field, we're all trying to search for the next puzzle piece to try and like put together this like giant jigsaw puzzle that we all have like these little pieces to. And over time, it's like the more you listen to, the more you read, the more you watch and like learn, you start to notice, oh, well, this piece, okay, well, that makes, okay, and that, oh, okay, oh, that's kind of, I kind of see where the picture, oh, well, then what about right here? So it's like you're always trying to like find, but everybody I talk to, they're like, yeah, it starts to make a cohesive piece. We just never have the full jigsaw puzzle. I don't think we ever will. There's too many things that go together. I wish I had more time to talk about Lemuria, because that alone, I don't know a whole lot on it, but it's a topic that really fascinates me, because it's so like, you tell like a normal person about it, they're like, you're a freaking crackpot, get away from me. It's like, listen, I get that, I really do, but it's like, it's weird to me that people are like, hey, listen, like, there's some things on Mount Shasta like that don't make a lot of sense, like a ton of UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, Dogman sightings, like abductions, why? Well, why are there these hot spots? In fact, I live by Mount Adams, and Mount Adams in Washington State is just like Shasta in the sense where it's like a huge hot spot for things. Yeah, I don't know why. I guess there's been people who've gone missing. A lot of, in fact, out by Trout Lake. You guys can Google all this, by the way, if you're listening. Trout Lake in Washington. There's a ranch there that my father-in-law told me that he's like, a lot of the damn yuppies go there to that weird ranch thing. I'm like, what ranch is that? He's like, apparently they see a bunch of UFOs or whatever. You can watch the UFOs there. And of course, where's Trout Lake by? Right by Mount Adams, which, guess where Trout Lake and Mount Adams has? It has a lot of unused lava tubes that are thousands of years old, supposedly. And I've gone down in some of those tubes. It's creepy because it's just so still and dark. And like, sometimes you wonder, I'm like, what else has been down here? Like, I don't know. So anyway,
my brother Ronnie is a retired cop from Walla Walla. And he said,
no way.
He said they constantly got reports of people seeing large, hairy men in their yards and stuff. Said happened all the time.
From a cop's perspective, it's so crazy to me that there's so many people, they hear about this stuff, but that like they can't really. It's like all the stuff you've heard about. Like, what do you do with that information? You just internalize it. Okay, okay. It has to become the norm at some point, because at this point we have so many like true accounts from like police officers who've like, hey, listen, I showed up at this lady's property and this thing tried to attack me. Like, I'm just doing my job. I'm trying to protect and serve. And like, I deal with this crap. Like, I didn't sign up for this. I wasn't trained for this. Like, come on. There's too much of that. In fact, one of the more, one of the many famous cases, right? Because there's so many of them. It was actually on Paranormal Witness. Some of you guys might know what I'm talking about. The Rain Man, right? I think his name is Donnie something. That was more of like a demonic thing. But and I just know there's a police officer involved, obviously, right? Kind of he kind of helped corroborate the story, and obviously he has credentials because he's an officer. I found that very interesting too. But we're talking about being an officer, and that just kind of brought that to me. But I'm like, yeah, something like that, right? How do you explain that? I don't know, man.
Exactly.
That there's just too much weird stuff. I wish I could remember the FBI agent who said it, but he was like, if people only knew what was outside, they would never leave their house. They would never leave their house. Well, what's that about, man? Come on, you can't cliffhang me.
And that's not just criminals. I mean, there's some.
I know what he meant. I could read between the lines. I knew exactly what he was talking. He did too. He knew what he was doing. So it's like, in fact, my dad-in-law was telling me, so where we are, that there's near Trout Lake, there's a small town called Glenwood, and where again, like this is, you're out in the boonies, right? That you're in the Simcoe Mountains. You're by the Simcoe Mountains. There's like a big valley and all that. And anyway, he's like driving out there, and he sees like 4 like the government black Suburbans drive by, and it's like, what's going on here? Like what's going on? He was thinking it was like maybe one of the government, or maybe like one of like our Governor Inslee. And I'm like, no, I'm like that. I don't think our governor would travel like not in like blacked out 4 government plated Suburbans. I'm like, I don't know. Of course, I could be wrong. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I probably don't, but I don't know. It's just, you hear all the stuff that goes on, especially around that area, and that's the direction they were heading. So I don't know, man. Too many things, too many weird things to cover. Not enough time.
Hold on, I've seen if I missed some comments.
Yeah, I'm trying to read through here too. A lot of people are commenting stuff. do a longer show tonight, guys. If you can, kicked it up a time or two. Well, we're already over, so
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
good if
too.
you're.
I'm good too.
Yeah, you're 2 hours earlier than me and 3 earlier than Robbie.
Yeah.
It'd be up to Robbie. He's the one's got to get up for work early in the morning.
I'll tell everybody what, I'll stay on here till 9. So it's 8:05 for me. So I'll stay until 9 my time because I got to go and do some house chores, but I'm still good for another hour. So you guys, okay. I'll give you guys all an extra hour. So we're good. I initially was going to get off now because I thought you guys were like, okay, show's closed, get out,
Nope.
So as long as I'm not overstaying my welcome here.
Dude, wow. No, I have never. You're welcome anytime.
We can keep the party going. That's so funny.
Robbie, we can't hear you, brother. We lost your audio. Robbie, be right back. Once a night, at some point during the night, he loses audio and has to go out and come back in.
All right, for all of those of you, what do we got? Like 200 people watching? Let's see. I'll pull it up. How many people we got going on? First off, I've been really informal. I apologize. Everybody who's watching, how are you guys doing tonight? Like, besides everything that's going on, I hope you guys are having a fantastic evening. It's a beautiful night where I'm at. Cold. I hope everyone is going to be looking forward to the holidays and eating some good food, right? Hopefully spending a good time with family. And this is the one time of year where we always try to get around to watching I think it is the National Lampoon, Christmas Vacation, that's of course a classic, right?
What I was going to say, DA, is if y'all want to stay on another hour, that's fine. But I'm going to have to bow out if we're going to do that because 5:45 comes awful early in the morning.
Oh, yeah. No worries, man.
Well, if you need to run, brother, I totally get it.
You want to do affiliates right quick before I go? Or
yeah, Josh, if you want to hit the bathroom or grab a drink refill, we're going to talk about our affiliates real quick before Robbie has to take off. And then we'll keep going.
Sure. Everybody listening, I'm going to take 5. Let these guys take it over from here. I'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Sweet. Well, first we'll hear from old Doc himself.
Hey, everybody. This is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books. And you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And if you go to darkangelmedical.com, don't forget to use discount code Cryptid25 for 25% off your entire order. And if you mention Wild Hunt or if you wish codename Wild Hunt or
Team Odin,
my book, Team Odin, he'll include a Team Odin rocker on your kit. You want to tell us a little bit about Scallywag?
Yep. Scallywag Tactical, another veteran-owned company that we're affiliated with. If you're familiar with DA's books, you've read the books, you've heard the Jolly Roger, you've heard the Bounty, you've heard the Gunner's Mate, Privateer, just boarding axe. You've heard a lot of those names of those blades in the books. The reason that DA puts them in the books and that we talk about them is because most of us have at least 2 or 3 or 4, or in DA's case, 7 or 8 or 9 of the knives. They're some of the best folders and fixed blade and just general all-purpose knife, kitchen knives, skinning knives, fillet knives, or EDC knives that you can have. This knife is rated 45, or not rated, but it's MSRP at $45. I got it for $15 on the Blemish blade section. I dare you to go find any knife anywhere in any store, even at the $45 price point, that's going to outperform this knife, and you're not going to be able to do it. This knife goes to the shop with me every day. I go to the shop, and it cuts cardboard, it cuts wood, it cuts tape, it cuts anything you could imagine that you have to cut when you're working in a shop environment. It cuts it. I've got my orca that goes on my uniform that goes to work with me every day with a serrated blade in case I have to cut a seat belt or whatever else I have to cut. And then, as DA likes to call my sailor assisted folder here, my Sunday go to meeting knife. It's my little pretty knife if I want one that's going to look nice, but still very, very business oriented. They got a knife for you. Go to the blemish blade section, find you a blade. 9 times out of 10, it's just a box. There's something extra on the other side of that one, ain't there, DA? We know a guy. If you get you a Scallywag Tactical and you want something on it, a little Wild Hunt symbol, maybe, a little Dark Frontier symbol, Ragnarok, Lakeview Man. We know a guy. We'll get there in a minute. Anyway, hit up Scallywag Tactical. Go find you a couple blades on the blemish blade section. Check out, put code DA Roberts 10 and get you an extra 10% off. Make sure you tell them we sent you. Craig and his guys will take care of you. I love to tell the story about how they made a customer for life with Steve by doing something that they didn't have to do. It's just one of those things that, and Steve will tell you, it was his ignorance and his error that broke the knife. And Craig didn't have to fix that, but he took the knife back, fixed it, and sent it back on his own dime. And he didn't have to do that, but he made a customer for life. And Steve has since ordered probably 4 more knives from him. More. So you're not just a number to him like you are to Kershaw or Schrade or Spyderco or any of those big box companies that just all they care about is the numbers. You're not a number. You're a customer to Craig and his team. So if you want you a good quality knife, go check them out. That's all I got to say about that.
And our other affiliate is brockblades.com. Whereas Scallywag blades are mass-produced and are high-quality blades, Ken's blades are all made by hand. He makes them in a shop behind his house. He's a retired cop. He's paid his dues in spades. I've got one here as well. Ken's blades are all unique. You can, they're custom made. If you've got anybody in your life that's an outdoorsman, hunter or fisherman or camper, veteran, law enforcement, any kind of first responder, the gift of a custom knife is something that won't be forgotten. And these aren't just something to put on a shelf to look pretty. These are high quality, highly usable knives. I carry mine all the time. So definitely check out brockblades.com, and you can custom order, select the style of blade and handle and everything in between. You can build your dream blade, and he'll customize it any way you want it. Check him out at brockblades.com, and don't forget to use discount code Cryptid10 for 10% off your entire order. And Robbie, if you need to take off.
Yep, I think I'm going to bow out gracefully, let y'all finish it up. I'm going to go get some sleep before I go and deal with our lovely people of society tomorrow.
Well,
then there were 2.
Yep.
And there were 2.
Josh, I enjoyed it, man. Hope to see you again soon.
Likewise. Hey, man,
Robbie,
before you go, can I bring you on my show?
Yeah,
you just get to talk. Sweet. Yeah, I'll have DA hook us up for communication. I have Go ahead.
Josh, there's something else you need to know about Robbie. Robbie's a trained tracker. He does it for his department. He can tell you things about Bigfoot tracking that your average layman will not understand.
I love it. That's even more exciting. Yeah. See, my whole thing is I want to bring people on, and it's your interview. So it's your show for that time. You just go. I want the spotlight in you. I want to pick your brain. So yeah. Just be prepared to give a lot of knowledge and just talk a bunch. So that's what I'd like to do.
Go to my Facebook page and look him up and just send him a friend request.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do that.
I'll know who you are now.
I'll do it. DA, later, brother.
All right, brother. You be safe.
Josh.
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you.
All right. See y'all later.
See ya.
Good night, man.
Good night.
Yeah.
All right.
There were 2.
Yeah, and then there were 2. All right, everyone that's left, you got to hang out with us for the next 45. So that way, At 9, my wife will yell at me. No, I'm kidding. She won't yell at me. Everything's cool. We're good.
I'll just get that one raised eyebrow. Like, are you going to be out there all night?
I'll bring up the same thing too. All right, so I have my video list open up, and I'm just going to try and like go through and like try to remember my topics. So like the first thing that comes to my mind, because the thing is, guys, I like cycle through so much stuff that like people are like, hey, remember that one video you did? And I really honestly like I kind of like do, but Josh, have you been at the no, I have not. Barton not only invited me there, I want to go, but like, do I really want to go? I do.
I had a good time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Speaking of LBL, I'm not gonna lie. I am intimidated to go because I'm afraid I'm gonna see something. And like once you see something, you can't take it back. So
yeah, you can't unsee it.
No, DA. I know you've told your story about like the whole. I know you've told me about it. So guys, I want to have DA on my show, and he's going to go into all the goodies about how he went and investigated the LBL, and basically an officer told him, a fellow officer was like, "You need to stop right now. Like, stop it."
Yeah,
what's that about, man? And obviously, I'm sure a lot of us here are very familiar with the Martin Groves encounter. Kind of the same thing too at the end, right? That one guy died, and people were like, "You need to like shut up. Like, just forget it. Forget about it." So a dude was dragged out of his truck and killed. How might you just want to forget about it?
No kidding.
Yeah, it's better for you. Just you don't need. Just it's not your business. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, some interesting stuff down the pipeline, folks. Well, I had a thought here. Okay, so LBL. No, we can riff on LBL. That's cool. There's really no agenda here. So the only really thing I know about LBL is obviously the famous incident that pretty much everybody knows. Well, it's interesting that there is such a campaign against it too. Like, well, it was a hoax. It didn't really happen. It was disproven. Was it disproven? How do you disprove it? You can't disprove it. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing about LBL. Just outside of LBL is a little town called Grand Rivers. It's just outside the north end of LBL, and that's where Annette and I stayed when we were there. I would go into LBL, and she stayed in the condo. She didn't want to go digging around in the woods. I talked to people in Grand Rivers, and I got the cold shoulder. I got thrown out of a bait shop for bringing.
Yeah.
But I asked if we could stay a couple days longer, but they'd already rented the little cabin we had. So we had to get a hotel a little farther away. It was like 10 miles down the road in a town called Paducah. In Paducah, everybody had a story. Everybody I talked to had a story. I got so many people tell me, "Oh yeah, I mean, I saw something down there. That place is freaky. I don't go there after dark anymore."
Oh my gosh.
There were people would hear me talking to somebody else and like, "Are you talking about those things in LBL? You've got to hear this."
So from a police officer opinion, I want to talk to police officer DA right now. Do you believe that story happened? I do. Am I wrong? Do you think that really that
I think it
was
happened.
Slaughtered?
I think it happened, and I think it happened more than once. In fact, there's supposedly another incident that happened in the area where I was at in Demumbers Bay in either 74 or 78, which was years before the family of four. This was a man and his wife that were killed, mauled to death just outside their tent in the Demumbers Bay camp area, and it was witnessed by a guy from the Department of Fisheries who was just out in the bay in a boat, and he was trying to yell at him.
You're the one that told me about that. And people thought it was a gugway.
No. And when he described it, it was definitely a Dogman.
And afterwards, didn't they they basically paved it over? They closed that thing off like that fast, right?
Oh, that was the one where the family of four was killed. Demumbers Bay is still there. In fact, where I had my sighting was about a half mile from where that happened.
Holy crap. Yeah, I've been telling some people about that. And I'm like, who told me that? It was you. Wow, imagine that.
Demumbers Bay is where I went at like 2 o'clock in the morning and was blasting predator calls on my phone and basically got chased out of there. I heard from 3 different directions something coming at me at high rate of speed, and I hauled my ass back and got in my van and fired it up and was like backing out of the area. And when my headlights went across the trees, there was and this is the part that threw me. So it, I don't know if it was Dogman or what, because people, when they describe Dogman, they always say it either has red or gold eye shine. What I saw was green, and there was 6 or 7 of them.
Oh my gosh! And where you say where'd you say this was at again? Demumber Bay.
LBL, right at Demumbers Bay.
Hold on. Why are you doing
About
this?
2 o'clock in the morning.
No thanks.
Yeah, I went down there. I'm an idiot.
No, you're curious, right? See, this is exactly why I'm like, this is why I'm not jumping up and down like, oh, I'm gonna go down there and document. I don't know, man. Like, listen, you, Martin Groves, there's a few people that I'm like, all right, I believe. I don't need any more convincing. Honestly, the infamous LBL incident alone was enough for me to be like, I'm never setting foot there. I did drive by it and I looked over at it when gosh, where were we going? I think it was on the way to Nashville. I'm trying to remember because I'd flown. I don't remember where I flew in from, but I remember driving over because there's a bridge, and if you're going eastbound, you can look to your left, and there it is. Like you're looking at the southern tip of LBL. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my god, this is where it happened, like 40 years ago. Oh my gosh, it kind of like made me feel weird. It made me feel weird because I'm like, wow. And then obviously the conference, they're like, yeah, do you like want to? We're only like an hour away. Do you want to go? I'm like, well, I can get a chance to go here. Like, what if I see something? Like, I want to see something, but at the same time, I don't want to see something. Yeah, because I'm like,
I've been in the woods in a lot of places in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing. I'm an Ozarks hillbilly. I've spent a lot of time in the woods throughout my life. LBL is the weirdest place I've ever been in the woods. I just can't describe it. I mean, I can tell you how it felt, but until you feel it, I'm not even really doing it justice. Outside of LBL over in Grand Rivers, we would see raccoons and possums and deer in the campground, all kinds of animals. In the north end of LBL, in almost a week, me running around in the north end of LBL, I didn't see a single animal, not one, not even roadkill.
I just realized, I feel like I as I'm looking at this map and I'm hearing you, I feel like I drove the 68 through there when I was on my way to Paris, Tennessee. I really do, because I'm looking at the map. I'm like, no, I remember driving right. Yep, I drove through here. Oh my gosh, I drove through here at 1 a.m.
It's a creepy area. Someplace you wouldn't want to be changing a tire at 1 a.m. I could.
Honestly, I would probably just stay in my car and call an Uber. To be honest, I really would. I wouldn't. The guys to do that, I'm like, they have balls this big. I no, thank you. And I'm looking here. I'm seeing like a lot of like, I don't want to say service roads, but they're definitely not main roads. I'd hate to be cruising that at like 3 a.m. and it goes for a while. So I'm seeing like a lot of like little like nooks, because there's like little like inlets, right? Yeah, you have all these like little parts of the island, or not the island, but you have these. Well, it's
a peninsula.
Yeah, peninsula. I'm gonna say it's not an island, it's a peninsula. There's like a lot of these little inlets I see all throughout, and all of these little inlets have just tons of like camping areas, like the Colson Hollow and this thing and that thing and. No, ho, ho, ho. Oh, gosh.
LBL is one of the creepiest places I've ever been. It's just the whole vibe of the place is weird.
Anybody in the comments should definitely like I want to hear your guys' thoughts on LBL. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a lot of poisonous snakes. Miriam. Yeah, a lot of poisonous things. So you already have that. So you said you saw Dogman. What did they look like? Exactly like they're described?
The one I saw, I was me and Nick Valente were coming out of Demumbers Bay, and just outside the campground there's a little concrete low water bridge, and it has a little like inlet that goes in underneath it, not very far, maybe 30-40 yards. And we had just passed that, and what we were doing is we were looking back in the woods for primitive campsites, and they're all over the area. They're not marked on the map. You've got to basically drive these little trails up through the trees to get to them. What we were looking for was these primitive campsites, hoping we could either see one that was abandoned, or two, possibly somebody camping that we could talk to, because there really wasn't that many people there when we were there. So we're driving down the road and we're just creeping along. I mean, we're just doing a mile or two an hour, just very slowly creeping along. And I'm looking out the right side, and Nick's driving, and he's looking out the left. And what I tell people, when I've been deer hunting, the only reason I ever saw a deer is I saw it move. Until it moved, I didn't even notice it was there. I'm like slowly panning the trees, looking, and I thought I saw something, but it didn't really flag in my head. And I continued to like look the trees, and then it moved. It turned its head to see what I was doing. And that's when I just like immediately zoned in on it. And
Oh
I
my
see this,
gosh.
it's completely black. It's got the hawked legs like a dog. And it's not powerfully built like a bodybuilder. It's built more like a dog on its hind legs with kind of a narrow chest and the spindly arms. And
Sure.
it had its right hand against a tree. It was just leaning against this tree. And I'm like beating Nick on the arm, pointing. I almost can't even talk. He slams on the brakes and I'm staring at this thing and he turns and looks at it. I saw it for 15 to 20 seconds and he probably got a good 10-second look at it. So it's not like we just got a glimpse.
Sure.
Completely black. The head is shaped like a wolf's head. Only here's the odd part. Instead of it being like a pointed, angular kind of snout, like on a wolf or a German Shepherd or a collie, this was more like a pit bull or a Rottweiler. It was narrower and blunter.
Interesting.
A wide jaw. And once it realized we'd seen it, it turned and did this really weird run. It instead of, you know, how we would take off, we'd run like that. It like jumped to the side, jumped to the side, jumped to the side again, and then went down a ravine.
Weird.
So we bail out, go hauling ass over there, and we can hear it crashing down through the trees, heading down toward the lake. Of course, you know, it's kind of a ravine. We're not going to be able to go after it without ropes because it was pretty rugged. And the leaf litter was about 6 inches deep, so there was no way we're getting any tracks. But you could see the impressions where it had disturbed the leaves. So I go back over to the tree, and I estimate where its hand was, and I'm able to reach that spot pretty easily. It's not where I would put my hand to lean against a tree. It's not comfortably in my range, but it wasn't, you know, where out of my reach either. So I estimated it to be between 6.5 to 7 feet tall at the most. It wasn't massive, but it was incredibly fast, completely black.
Honestly,
And that was like 10:30 in the morning.
That's why. And you, Nick Valente, saw it, right?
Mm-hmm. We both saw it.
Gosh, man. See, sometimes I'm like, man, that's the kind of sighting I want to have where I'm like, oh, I just see it. Like, okay, like I've seen it. But like, then you have people who are like, no, it was like trying to like rip my throat out and, you know, try to get in my car. And I honestly think I would be traumatized from something like that. I don't know. I almost worry that like that sort of thing might drive me away from doing what I do. Because I'm like, it would just be traumatizing. I'm like, I don't want to like think about it anymore. You know what I mean? I don't know. I haven't had it. So okay, I had to correct myself, everybody. So the road I drove, because when I did the conference, all the flights, I think I took Alaska and they weren't flying into Nashville for that particular flight. So I had to fly into Louisville. And then I drove from there to Paris. And so I took the 79. And so I'm looking at the highway because that goes right into Paris. And I remember driving that. But for those that aren't familiar, maybe you are familiar, as you're going southbound, I should say southwest to Paris, I was doing this like what, 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember driving that Porsche 79, and I remember thinking to myself on that right-hand side, I'm like, this is the LBL. Like, holy crap, like it's all here. I mean, it's a several mile stretch of road where it's just like, yep, it's all right there on your right-hand side. Like you get out of your truck, you walk right into it. I remember that did freak me out, and I'm happy that nothing happened, but that whole drive, man, as I'm like, I drove because there's a lot of 79 that like goes through like really rural Tennessee and Kentucky. It's like you're out in the sticks, like it's farmland, it's a lot of nothing, it's like thick, dense forest. It freaked me out. I'm like, oh man, like of course it's the middle of the night, it's dark, there's no lights anywhere. You know, you hear all these stories, and I'm like, I felt like I was in one. I'm like, something's gonna come out in the middle of the road anytime now. Nothing did. I don't know how. I'm lucky. But I just kept thinking that the entire time. And I remember I finally arrived at the hotel conference like 1:30 in the morning because I didn't get to like Louisville to like what it was like 10. I finally got my rental car at like 10:45. I'm like, well, here we go, 3 hours. I better because like the conference was the next day. So I was like, I gotta get there and like crash it. There was no other choice. So yeah, it was wild, man. Josh, have you seen a Bigfoot? No. I've not. I've had supernatural experiences, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. I definitely couldn't explain it, but I've not been in a situation that I'm aware of that I knew it was around me. Say Dark Frontiers. I don't know what that is.
That's my book. One of my newest books. Richie Evans said, did y'all get it on film? Dude, I had my phone in my hand with the intention of filming if I saw something. And the whole time I saw that, because I was like beating on Nick with my phone, I had literally had my phone in my hand with the camera app up, and filming didn't even enter my brain until it was
No.
long gone.
It's like, I try to tell them, like, okay, I want you to put yourself in this mental spot. Let's say you're walking down the road, and let's say somebody comes up to you and starts harassing you, and within like 10 seconds, it turns like they start to threaten you with like violence. Like let's say they pull out a knife or a gun at you, and they say, if you don't give me all your money now, I'm gonna rape you, or I'm gonna like kill you. Like right now, you won't have anything to do. In that moment, are you thinking, well, I better pull out my phone and make sure I have proof of this? No, your immediate response is like, oh shit, like I'm gonna die, or I'm in danger, primal fear, or I'm in shock, right? And then your main human response is like, I gotta survive. And so I tell people that because I'm like, people say, well, of course he didn't have his phone out. I'm like, you got to understand the context of the situation, my man. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like most people are so caught off guard. They're so in shock. And then, of course, the people that do, and I tell people this too, I'm like, I have an idea. Pull out your phone right now. And I want you to pull up the camera app. And I want you to try and take a picture of something that's like 45, maybe 50, 60 feet away. Number one, you have to zoom in. And as you know, if you have to zoom in, the slightest movement is like with your camera app. So it looks terrible and jumpy. So it's like, God forbid one of these things is moving. So it's like, can you imagine trying to get quality footage of something that's like very fast or only stands there for a second? On top of this, let's say you had a DSLR camera, had like the best possible image captured, like the clearest, whatever it was, people would still say it's a hoax. It's all someone in a costume.
Yeah.
Listen, folks, at the end of the day, people who disbelieve are looking to disbelieve. I think the majority of people who have seen evidence and who want to believe, they're like, yeah, I think that's credible. It's just how it is. I just don't think the people who are looking to believe from a photo aren't really there to believe. Does that make sense? Maybe that's not really the best way to word it, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
I heard an expression one time. It's for those who believe, no proof is necessary.
Yeah,
For those
exactly.
who refuse to believe, no proof will do.
Right. Exactly. And of course, don't get me wrong. There's BSers, of course. Of course there's a lot of them. But at the same time, there are people who've had genuine experiences. And again, it kind of goes back to that, like that fight or flight situation. What kind of feeling did you get from that thing? Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, a lot of people have said that when they spotted a dogman or when they had a dogman encounter that they felt like prey. They felt like they were going to be eaten. I didn't get that. I was so freaking out what I was looking at, and it didn't like. I didn't feel like it was stalking me. I figured it was more like its expression was, "Oh shit, they saw me," and then it beat feet. And so I didn't really feel like I was under any kind of threat. I didn't feel like it was hunting us. I just, we happened to see it. And if it had not moved, we would have driven right on by and never noticed it.
You got to be aware when you're in these locations and situations to really try to, because if you're just driving through, you probably won't see it. And it almost makes you wonder how many times, and people have asked this about serial killers, where they're like, can you imagine how many times you go throughout the day and like you pass by a serial killer or like a rapist or something, you have no idea. And I'm like, yeah, like what if out of all the times you've been in the woods, do you ever wonder like how many times you may have been through like an area where one of these things was at, or maybe you were being watched, you had no idea from like afar? Yeah, you'll never know. Never will know. I think one of the things that really bothers me is definitely the areas that are hot spots. Like I was telling you about Mount Adams earlier. Obviously, LBL is a huge hot spot. For the people that like just casually go camping there. I think what blows me away is the people that go camping there like on the regular and they don't have any weird experiences happen at all.
Well,
I don't know how that's
the same thing with deer hunters. I mean, you can
Yeah.
talk to people that have deer hunted for their entire lives and never had an experience, and then you run into a deer hunter who's like, I hunted for 30 years and never saw something, but that thing scared the hell out of me. I've talked to so many guys that have had hunting experiences who didn't believe in these things in any way, shape, or form for years and years and years until they saw one.
It makes you wonder. I'm like, if these are supernatural beings, which I believe they are why doesn't it, like, why does it only appear to certain people? I don't, like, because like you said, that there are people I've talked to who are like, I've hunted in the woods all my life. My dad has, my grandfather has. We ain't seen nothing. And like you said, hey, I've been hunting since I was 12. I'm 24, 12 years hunting. I have like 100 accounts that I could tell you about. I don't know, man. It's like, are some people just magnets? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me either. But it doesn't make me just. Go ahead.
I think that supernatural and cryptid things, I think they're kind of like well, here's a great example. Um, I recently, when our van got destroyed, I bought a Nissan Rogue. I'd never owned one, didn't even pay any attention to them, can't even remember seeing one. But after driving that Rogue for a few weeks, I see them all over the place. I never noticed them before, but they were always there.
Is that
I
weird
think
how that
it's
happens?
much like with paranormal or cryptid. Once you see it, you open yourself up to the possibility of it. You're noticing things that you would have ignored before.
It does make me wonder, I want to talk about this before we end up running out of time, is the cemeteries. We all know there's a lot of weird stuff. Hey, Tomes, you were the guy that I gave a thumbs up to in case you didn't see me, because I said that's very sweet of you. I see there's a handful of cemeteries in LBL. I can't even imagine trying to go spend a night in one of those cemeteries all night, like in the LBL, just because I don't, for those that aren't aware, I've heard many stories that dogmen are very much so attracted to cemeteries for whatever reason. I don't know why. Um,
I think it's because they can smell the cadavers.
I don't know. I've heard other theories that it maybe has to do with the energy. I don't
Maybe.
know. You're talking to a guy who's not educated on it, so I'm just really just guessing that there are
I know
definitely
we can
people who are.
train dogs to find bodies.
Yeah, yeah,
I think they're drawn to the smell.
maybe. I mean, it's very possible. I don't know, but I see there's like there's Pleasant Valley, there's Newton, there's like at least 6 cemeteries that I can see just between Felton
They're
and
more
like
than
Grand Rivers.
that. There's little family cemeteries all over LPL.
Really? Why?
Yeah, the place
Why
is
is that?
littered with them because that was
Why?
all farmland until
Oh,
1963.
LBL's that young?
LBL was known as the land between the rivers prior to
Oh,
1963. There's been people that lived there. The Native Americans prior to then, before first European settlers got to that area, had already said the land between the rivers was cursed land. Don't live there. And when European
why?
settlers got there, of course, they said that there were creatures there. They talked of dog-headed creatures. The first European settlers, not settlers, the first Europeans in that area were French trappers in the late 1600s who reported seeing the loup-garou, which is the French word for werewolf.
Yep.
In 1963, the Tennessee Valley Authority received permission to dam those two rivers to create Lake Barkley and the Kentucky Lake. Up until that point, that was all farmland, and they went in and kicked hundreds of people off their land to make those lakes.
Oh,
And
I'm
those
getting the
families
goosebumps,
had
man.
family plots all over the place.
Yeah, that's and
Some
it's
of
a
some of those cemeteries are still maintained, some aren't.
it well it, when it for all of you, including you DA who like are around this area, I see it. It looks like once it hits 79, it kind of like, oh yeah, no, that is the end of it. It does kind of trail off because then it becomes like other towns and things. But does any of the occurrences? Okay, hold on. Let me think of how to phrase this. So, okay, so we know that peninsula, from what we hear, is cursed. There's all sorts of weird stuff. What I'm asking is, it looks like the road 79 is kind of like almost like a border, right? Like you go on the left side if you're going south. If you go on the left side, then it kind of becomes something else. How far over does that trickle, or is it literally just kind of more contained in that
It,
area?
it is mostly between those two lakes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
It extends pretty far south where it does have land borders, but for the most part, LBL is contained between those two lakes.
Oh, the Kentucky Lake. What's the other one?
Lake Barkley.
Yeah, Lake Barkley. I'm kind of curious as to why they call them a lake, just because they look more like well, I could see no other lake, but they look more like just a big old river. But
Well,
that's
that's
so
really what they
fascinating.
were. Most of the man-made lakes in the United States, like Lake of the
Mhm.
Ozarks or Table Rock Lake here in Missouri, were rivers that they just dammed up and flooded the valley. That's why if you
So
look at a map of
interesting.
Lake of the Ozarks, it looks like a snake slithering through the Ozarks because it's just a
Interesting.
flooded river.
Has anybody like ever gone like fishing around? Like how's the fishing?
Supposedly the fishing's really good. I've never fished there, but supposedly they have bass fishing tournaments. They have fishing tournaments on both lakes. So yeah, the fishing's really good. In fact, it's the primary tourist attraction for Grand Rivers.
Wow, I'm looking at some of the street view things right now. There's like I'm over the 453, right? That kind of goes into Grand Rivers. I didn't realize how much water is between Grand Rivers and LBL. Like it's holy crap, it's a lot bigger than I realized.
Yeah,
There's a
it's
large barge going through.
250,000 acres, I believe it is. Jesse C says, "What is further below the land, underneath?" I don't know. If the topography there, because LBL is not that far into Kentucky and Tennessee, it's pretty close to the Mississippi. It's just a couple hours drive. Actually, I don't even think it's that far. I think it's just over an hour. But it's not far into Tennessee and Kentucky. So if the topography there is anything like it is here in Missouri, probably a lot of caves.
How much, this goes to everybody in chat too, how much money would it take for you guys to spend a night in LBL? I sure as hell will. I think you put a lot of money on a check for me, and I'd still say no, man. There's no way. There's no way, bro. You would do it? You're crazy.
Hell yeah, I would.
You're crazy, man. What's wrong with you?
Of course, I'd take Doc and Robbie and maybe a couple other like-minded individuals.
Didn't you ever listen to the natives? It's cursed, man.
Let's just say there won't be any lack of pew-pews.
You ain't never seen Pet Cemetery, man. Stay away.
No, I seriously would spend the night there. I really would.
You know, I think if realistically, if the situation was right and I was with several other dudes who were very well armed, including myself, and we had a very well lit camp, I don't know. You're still flirting with lions, man. You really are.
Injury says $7 trillion. For $7 trillion, I'd build a homestead and live there.
I'll do it for free. You guys, honestly, you guys are all crazy. Like, okay, let's say you're armed. Let's say you're all like packing like 45s and like, you just still run into the chance where it's like, what if you go piss? You gonna take a buddy with you? Like, I don't know. Are you talking like tromping around? Are you just talking like staying in a camp? Like, there's a lot of like, okay, what do you?
There are campsites there. There are cabins you can rent there. There's all kinds of places you can stay.
And don't get me wrong, like I know there are many people every year that go there and stay that nobody has problems with sightings. I get that, but maybe it's just because like I know so much about like the things that have gone on that's in my head. So I'm like, I would go there just expecting those things to happen. I'd be shocked if those things didn't happen. Yeah, I don't know, man. There's just that place in particular. Like, if you're to say, is there one area in all the United States that like you probably wouldn't go? I feel like that would be like the number one contender for sure. I would definitely, I think, rather go to like all, like, especially like Yellowstone. Yellowstone has a bunch of weird stuff. All these places, Headless Valley. I think LBL takes the cake, and just because of the nature of it, man. And it's not just that. A lot of the South is like that too. Even my friend Alan was telling me, he's like, obviously with the Trail of Tears and all the other crap that was going on in the war, like there's a lot of tragedy in that area. And even obviously before Europeans came over, right? Like you had a lot of wars between tribes. Like it's just, there's a lot of crap in that area. And then of course, if you like, go down to like the whole bayous in Louisiana, you brought a lot of people up. Gosh, help me out here, folks. Creoles, right?
Haitians?
Yeah. Haitians, that's what I'm thinking of. That they brought along a lot of their voodoo and a lot of their stuff. So it's like there's just a lot of dark energy, I guess I should say. It's like in that whole, when I say that pocket, I'm talking like Eastern Texas up. It's almost like a triangle, right? From like Eastern Texas up to like Maine down to Florida. Like that whole area is just like it's all cursed or something. I don't know, man. I don't know. It creeps me out. I definitely have my limits. And so now, would it be cool to go and investigate? Absolutely. But definitely surrounded by guards who are heavily armed and in the daylight for sure.
Here's another one for you that you could do a show on your channel, Josh.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the legend of Old Green Eyes?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think I have.
During the Civil War, at the Battle of Chickamauga.
Oh, yes.
Officers from both sides of the fight reported a green-eyed creature that would come out on the battlefield and carry off the wounded and the dead.
And eat them.
And
feast. Yes. Yeah. I'm having
great
memory
story.
of that. I wish I could remember what episode that was. I definitely, yes. yeah, weird stuff, man. Like I tell everybody, there's been stuff happening since we came over here. In fact, a lot of the like crazy stories you get come from like the 1600 fur trappers, especially the guys who are up in the Rockies, and you know, like they've seen some stuff, to put it lightly. And it's got to be weird for them because they didn't have a concept of Bigfoot, so they just see this like, you know, 10-foot
They
tall
didn't know what a
like,
Wendigo was.
no, they just see this thing. They're like, what the is that thing? Well, we don't know. Let's kill it. You know, I don't know what it is. But to them, it wasn't like, oh, we saw something supernatural. It was just like, oh, it was just a matter of, it was like a wild beast of the, open to doubt. There's also the legend of the Werewolf Springs, not far from the Werewolf
That's
Springs.
a great story. Werewolf Springs in Tennessee.
Thank
that
you.
That is a great story. That's Miss
Whoever wrote
Neoma.
that.
I need to introduce the two of you.
Neoma, thank you.
She would be a great resource for you. This lady has done her research.
Neoma,
she's
reach out to me personally, please. I want you on my show. You're a smart chick.
She's researched the crap out of that Moss Mountain Massacre I told you about.
Oh yeah, please come on.
Oh yeah, she's a wealth of information on cryptid attacks, especially dating from the Civil War on.
And by the way, I open up the invitation to anyone here in these comments who are watching. If you have a story you want to share or you want to like, talk about stuff, please. Like, I don't discriminate. Come on, like, talk to me. Like, you know, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Listen, my end goal here is I want to get as much of this information out to as many ears as possible, because you never know, like me, you happen to click on something out of curiosity, you hear something, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy. Oh, there's more to this? Well, I'm going to jump down this rabbit hole. I want to blow up this niche as much as I can, and I need your guys' help to do it, right? It's like that Matt Emsch thing I did. That dude, his story has over 500,000 people who've heard his story. To me, that's amazing. That's something so like far-fetched to most people and something so niche down has now been heard by people who probably never would even entertain the idea. So it's just cool, man. More people deserve to have their stories heard like that. Yeah, you could reach out to me through email as well, or just reach out to me on Facebook. Whatever's easiest, please do. That's for everybody. Or if you guys know somebody who are like, oh, I think this would be a great thing, please. Even if you have a story to share, I want you guys to be the stars here. All right, let's see here. Oh yeah, the Bladenborough. That's another crazy one. Hold on, before I go on about the Bladenborough thing, I need to write down that werewolf one. What'd you say it was?
Springs. Werewolf Springs.
Write this down. You guys are great.
Miss Neoma has researched that a lot. You need to talk to her. She can tell you anything you want to know about Werewolf Springs.
She'll be telling them, not me.
It's an incredible story. You are gonna love it.
Sweet. Also, if there's anybody in the audience who knows anything about like more of the connections between like cemeteries and like Dogman, please do. I really want to like do more into that. Like this guy, Conscience Con, something, I don't know what his name is. Cemeteries smell like chemicals. I think has to do with the energy as well. The people that frequent them open to supernatural and entrenched in grief. Interesting. That's definitely something I'd kind of look into more. Okay, yeah. So the Beast of Bladenborough, I believe that's like a big black cat. And I don't remember who posted. I just saw it on Facebook like 2 days ago. Somebody, it was in Arkansas, Alabama. It was Mississippi. Somebody had a trail cam, and it took a picture of a freaking black leopard, right? It was like, holy crap. We don't have those up here, but there it is. Crazy, right? So I didn't know this, guys, and I just found this out as I'm reading these comments. My dad was telling me that the Fish and Game up here is actually like taking Arctic wolves and placing them up here to kill the deer supply, which I thought is very interesting. So we're getting like a bunch of like deer and grizzly bears, because we don't have wolves and grizzly bears up here in the state of Washington, but I guess they're transplanting them down here so that way they don't want you to be self-sufficient. Basically, they want to completely deplete the deer population. It's kind of crappy. There's a local tribal cemetery in Snohomish County out by their. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of weird stuff around Snohomish County. Most of everyone's where I went at night fishing. Why does it seem to be an uptick in occurrences? So I think part of that is also because the day and age we live in, where we've almost become this like huge clique, and so many people are now able to share their stories and experiences. So I feel like that's it. I think
there's less of a stigma on reporting it these days too.
Yeah. Yeah,
when I was
remember,
a kid,
guys,
if you had a Bigfoot encounter, oh my God.
Yeah, you don't talk about
crazy. Don't ever talk to that guy. He's nuts. He thinks he saw Bigfoot.
But at the same time, these things are also continuously occurring. So it's like what DA said. So you have these three things that are all going on simultaneously. So it definitely feels like, yeah, that there's more, and there might be more. These things might be coming out more. It's hard to say. Many folks not believe in other capacity. Yeah, it's true. I would do it for a 6-pack, dude. Yeah, but what if the 6-pack ends your life, bro? That's the thing I worry about. Is like, I don't want to be that guy they found mauled to death. No thanks. There's a lake, or gets like, stalked or something. Honestly, Martin Grove's story was terrifying, flat out terrifying. No, thank you. And he didn't just have one, right? He had like Bigfoot and Dogman or something in that story. I really want to bring him on. I'm friends with Daryl Denton, I believe it's his name, and I know he's like buddy with Martin. We got to get Martin on and like get him to tell his story to the world.
Martin's health's been pretty rough lately, so
I know, that's what I've heard. I know,
poor guy. He's doing any shows or anything.
No. Bless his heart, man. He's a good dude, but again, he has an experience that many people, and I believe him. He seems like a really honest dude. I didn't get any vibes from him that he was like falsifying anything. It was just like, hey, again, reliving his experience. He's like, I didn't want this to happen. It happened to me.
When he tells the story, you can see he's visibly shaken.
Yeah. Well, especially as he's like going back to camp and he starts to hear the noises. Oh, I'm like getting goosebumps thinking about it, man. It's stuck with me. Let's see, rent a party boats. yeah, you could, but doesn't that defeat the purpose? I think if I were to do it, it would have to be crazy, right? I'd have to like go and get on a boat, or not get on a boat. I'd have to like get a tent and like go in like the heart of LBL where like the most of the things are, and like maybe be close to a cemetery. I don't know. At that point, maybe I'm asking for death. I don't know. Sort of like Bridgewater Triangle. Oh, hold on. I got way far behind. There we go. Interesting. Somehow I got way up in the comments. Here we go. Now I'm kind of done where we are.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay. The bladder. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. It's interesting to me that there's the whole like cat humanoid sightings. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of those, but yeah, some people have reported and talked about cat humanoids. It's very, very strange, very odd. What about you guys? What do you guys think about that? I did an episode, I think it was last year. I don't even really remember it because it was the one where I tried to do a weird thumbnail where I'm like, half my face is a cat. I don't think it really worked out really well in hindsight, but it was all about like people were talking about like cat humanoids, and I think there's a lot less on it, but
yeah, I haven't heard as many stories about felinoid humanoids.
How do you say it?
Felinoid. Feline humanoids.
Felinoid. That's cool, man. No. I'm kind of starting to scroll back through Glastonbury Mountain. Oh, I forgot about that. The issues here, there's just so many things. Josh, did you ever research about the cat cryptids? And no, I did not, dude. I did not. I'm sorry. Do you think the government is experimenting with animals and releasing them? Oh, 100%. I 100% believe that.
I don't think Bigfoot or Dogman were created in a lab.
No,
but I certainly think our government is not above experimenting on something if they can get hold of it.
So Joe Barger, right? He's the guy. Remember, for you guys who don't know, he basically shot a Dogman through his truck and blew its brains out. Long story short, he was accosted and I don't say kidnapped, but taken against his will, and they were basically threatening him. They're like, "Hey, you killed one of our assets," and they're like,
"Asset tried to get in my truck."
Yeah, they're like, if you don't stop talking about it, we can make a lot of bad things happen. They're like, oh, maybe you end up pissing dirty for one of your tests and you lose your trucking job. Maybe your bank account gets frozen. We don't know. Anything could happen if you keep talking about it. And so he's like, holy crap, like, who are you people? Yeah, because if I remember right, he was like, what do you mean I killed your ass? They're like, you know what we mean. Like, dude, we know. We're the government. We know. We know everything. Let's see. I'm scrolling back. I'm trying to find that cat thing. Oh yeah. Okay. I remember I did this one almost a year ago. The Vatican exposed. That was the Chronos or the Chrono, that little time thing the Vatican had. I forgot about that. Supposedly they were able to see into the past. Crazy stuff. Wow. I'm getting into some episodes that I forgot I even did. Are angels real? Oh, so Josh wrote me a really long script for you guys. Have you guys ever heard of the Fatima thing? It's like one of the biggest supernatural events in like the history of the earth, where a bunch of like kids like saw the angel Mary. Like hundreds of people saw it.
Really?
Yeah, look into it. It's Fatima, Fatima. There's more to that. It's not just called Fatima, but that's where it took place. Let's see, Fatima Supernatural. Let's see if I can find it. Miracle of the Sun. The event was declared of supernatural character by the Catholic Church in 1930. A shrine was built near the site of Fatima. Fatima mystery blends visions. Our Lady of Fatima, I think, is what it's actually called. Yeah, you'll have to read into it. So it's like it took place in like 1918 or something like that, and they have something happened to these 3 kids who saw Mary like in spiritual form or something like that, and apparently like one of the girls. I might be botching the story, but I'm trying to remember fragments. If I remember right, one of the main persons was told the other 2 kids are going to die, and sure enough, like almost like the bubonic plague, the Spanish flu came through. Or I think they died from a flu. Something happened. You guys will have to check up on it. Something happened. I don't remember. It's been a while since I looked into it. But anyway, Josh wrote me like this massive, like 12,000 word script to do it on. A massive script. This is going to be a long episode. I haven't done it. He wrote it for me like last September. And it's just been sitting in the vault until the right time to do it. Yeah, the Fatima Virgin Mary thing. Yeah, so that will come down the pipeline eventually whenever I get to doing that. Anyway,
you've got a lot of stuff on your plate, man.
I got a lot of things in the vault that people don't know about. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. A lot of really cool stuff. Well, the thing is, Josh writes really fast. So I probably like 20 scripts that I'm like, he's like, oh, do you remember I wrote this back in December? I'm like, no. I'm like, oh yeah, like the lead masks case, the Brazilian thing where like those 2 guys were found dead. He did a whole thing on that. I haven't even covered it yet. Well, he covered it. I haven't like done it yet. So yeah, I can't like produce that fast. He's just an animal, man. He's like Nick Redfern. He could like blink and he writes a book. I'm like, dude, you're a flipping animal, man. How do you do that? He just knows things, man. He just knows things and knows things.
I need to kick up the tempo on my writing schedule as well. I need to get more books out.
Well, that's why you got to connect with other authors to pick their brain. Like, okay, how do you do it? Like, I need to. Everyone's like, dude, you got to write more of a book. I'm like,
I can write them pretty fast. It's just I get lazy and don't get as much done as I should.
Yep, that's my thing too. Sorry, but I'm like scrolling back through and seeing if there's anything that stick. There's a lot of things that stick out, but which ones in particular? No, a lot of
dude, we were coming up on the top of the hour. I know you said you were going to have to go.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, at this point, we're probably gonna have to just call it. Have you heard about the Megalodon?
We need to do it again.
Yes, we will. So why don't
I think you're just getting wound in. I mean, we could go for 3 more hours and not cover everything.
I could go for 12. Honestly, yeah, that's the problem. I see my wife; she's like messaging me. She's like, "Hey, when are you done?" So I'm like, "Oh, okay." You tell me 8 o'clock. Yeah, well, sorry. Stuff happens.
We got on a roll.
Why
don't we do it again? I mean, maybe after the holidays.
Part 2. Yeah, or yeah. So again, guys, for those of you that like know people that should tell their story, or if maybe you want to tell your story, if you know things that you want to talk about, please like reach out to me, please. I don't bite. Let's talk. I want to put this note out that if it's something you guys are interested in, and you too, DA, this goes to everybody, that my thing is I don't want to do like kind of like what a lot of shows do where you kind of just go back for like, I want you guys to be the star. The episode will be you. I want you to spill all the beans, tell all your knowledge. I'll ask you questions, but if you guys have seen the Matt Emch thing, like it's like 95% him. So the final product would probably look something like, basically I edited out a lot of like me asking you questions and talking because you're the star of the show. So that's kind of what it'd look like. So if that's of interest to you and you think you have something to add to the table, then please, reach out to me. You guys can do it through email. It's stories@whatlurksbeneath.com. You can reach out to me on Facebook. You can reach out to DA. He'll put you in contact with me. There's many ways. Please. Who Neona? Oh, thank you. I emailed you. Yes. Thank you, Neona. Again, and anyone else who has an experience or can think of somebody that would. But let's shoot for a redo. I guess a part 2 right after the holidays. DA's I'm gonna force him to come on my show and do the same thing. I'm gonna
force me, man. I'd love to do it.
I'll shoot you a couple dates here in the next like week, and we'll figure out like what works, and we'll just kind of aim for like 2-3 hours. With that said, guys, I should probably bail out and go 10 family stuff. And guys, I hope you guys all had a fun time hanging out with us and like listening to 2 old dudes just riff back and forth on weird, cool stuff. I love you all. I'm so glad you guys came and hang out with us. I hope you guys have a fantastic night wherever you are. Hope life is all right. And yeah, I will see you guys all very soon. It was a pleasure.
Man, thank you again for coming on, brother.
Absolutely,
you're welcome
man.
Anytime.
Well, I appreciate that. Likewise, buddy. Likewise. All right, guys. I got to take off. Love you all. I will see you in the hopefully not too distant future. Peace, guys. I'm gone.
Good night, man.
Good night.
Well, folks, since it's down to just me, I'll take a moment of your time and mention the 22 a day foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. So if you've got a friend or a family member who's a veteran or is a member of law enforcement, reach out to them. Law enforcement or first responder in any capacity. Reach out to them, let them know you're thinking about them, because that text or phone call that you send them might be what keeps them back off the edge. We're losing way too many. 22 a day is 22 too many. So think about your friends and family, especially with the holidays coming, because it's a hard time on people. So again, take a moment, give them a phone call, reach out to them, let them know you're thinking about them, because it might just make all the difference to somebody who's struggling. And if you don't have anybody to reach out to me. My email address has been popping up frequently throughout the show. I'm happy to talk. I've been there. But think about the ones you know about, the ones you know and care about. Reach out to them and let them know. Again, that's the 22 a day foundation. You can also check out the Till Valhalla project. They do a lot with veterans charities, and they really help a lot of folks. So I'm very proud to be supportive of them. But I'm going to round out the show. I know it's just me now, but I'm going to do my toast. It's something I'm pretty happy that we've started doing, and it's something I'm probably always going to do. There's an old Irish song called "The Parting Glass," and it's, when you read the lyrics and listen to what they're talking about, it's about raising a glass and saying goodbye to those who can't, and who have gone before, we've lost along the way. It's a beautiful tune. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, I recommend going on YouTube, search "The Parting Glass," and give the song a listen, because it's a beautiful song. So I'll end the show with a quote, and I'll put it up so you guys can read it. And I'll try not to put it right in the middle of my face. "But since it fell unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all." Good night, everybody. And thank you guys for being with us. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Robbie, for hanging out. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you guys so much for being part of the DA Ex MachiNation. And we'll see you guys on Saturday. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DA Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.